Yeah, so that's like 2 reasons why I don't think I'll be watching Glass Onion.
I mean, I don't know. John, what do you think? Do you think that Christian would hate Glass Onion?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, see,
God.
there you go. Thank
It's
you
just
very much.
the overall attitude of it is.
It must be miserable to go through life hating so much content.
No, see, it's not miserable at all because there's a lot of content that I really like. Like my thing is that it's like I normally see it's different with you two because we're like friends and also we're like doing a podcast surrounding like us sharing our opinions on things. But in my normal day-to-day life, I just don't recommend anything to anyone ever. And then I have like my little niche corner of things that I know that I like. I don't share it with anyone because they're not going to fucking go watch it anyway, so who cares? And anytime anyone recommends anything to me, I go, oh yeah, I'll add that to the list. And then I immediately forget what they said to me. And it's really not that bad, but it is true. Like there's definitely been moments where I've like gone over to friends' houses or whatever. And they've been like, oh, hey, we're going to like sit down and like watch a movie or like whatever the fuck. And that actually does make me want to die. Like there's nothing that I hate more than being like accosted at someone's house with like long form media that I can't criticize because it would not be polite. Yeah. Like that's awful.
On the other hand, when you left Christian's house early and I stayed the next night over.
That's exactly what I did to John.
This is exactly what happened. We sat down. Instead of going out again for the night, we sat down on my last night in Arizona and watched like really long form video, like 4 hours long.
No, like 4.5 hour long video essays
multiple
that I made John watch.
We just sat there with beer and chips for like 8 hours, dude. It was good.
Wow.
Yeah, but to be fair, that shit ruled, dude.
Yeah. We're both into it, so it like,
so it was fine. But yeah.
Okay.
But see, because I'm saying like when I'm recommending things to people, I'm like, hey, you should spend 4.5 hours watching like a deep dive on like the decline of various speedrunners. You know, like. Because I'm like, that's the shit I like, you know what I mean? But, like, you know, I can't just recommend that to people.
It's the most
like,
uber niche content you could ever consume.
Well, I mean, truly. Like, it's like people don't even know it exists. And, in fact, they'd probably be, like, shocked and offended if they ever figured out it did, you know?
Well, you know what I would recommend? I would recommend a podcast.
Called?
What's it called?
What's the shit.
Oh, shit.
Oh. It's not playing.
It's not playing? Excelsior. Right, we can't. Okay, wait. So do we just have to like guess and assume?
Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on.
He's gonna fix it. Okay.
Hold on.
All right.
You're gonna cut all this out, right?
No, I won't. Okay, so for the listener,
you're gonna cut it out.
Just played the intro and we couldn't hear it.
Okay, I fixed it now.
Okay.
All right.
Let's see.
Let's try it.
You know what I would recommend though?
Okay, what would you recommend?
I would recommend a podcast. Called Cape Shit.
Okay, yes, and I can hear that.
Okay, we can hear
No, but
hey,
you can't. Hold on. You can't say that you hear it.
Okay, right. Yeah, of course, because then we're sort of like breaking the fourth wall. Yeah, no.
Right.
So we're cutting again right there. We cut.
Yeah, okay. Cut. Okay,
And,
this is another cut in the intro. This will not.
And,
okay, I got it.
All right.
Right.
No, hold on. I forgot to say the thing first.
Okay.
Here we go.
Okay, yeah, because you have to say like the intro.
I have to say the thing.
Right, of course. Right.
That we're going to cut into. And you know what podcast?
No, sorry. I was coughing during that take. Can we do
I'm gonna lift up my standing desk?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's gonna make some noise.
It's okay. We'll cut it out. We'll cut it out.
We'll
cut it out.
Okay.
All right.
All of this that just happened, we're gonna cut it out.
And can we get just like maybe like 3 seconds of room noise really quick so that I have a good spot to cut it? Okay.
And
okay, well that wasn't 3 seconds. I'm gonna need.
No, but I didn't say the thing. I said and to stop the noise.
Right. Okay. And to stop the and room noise now.
You know what podcast I would recommend?
Okay, that's okay. What podcast is it that you would recommend?
Would recommend a podcast called Cape Shit.
Oh. Woo! Hey, what's up, everybody? My name's Christian. This is that aforementioned podcast known as Cape Shit that Dan would recommend.
Yeah.
we perfectly got that intro down very easily, and I'm Dan.
Yeah.
This is a very good podcast, I promise.
Yeah.
I'm John.
Yep. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your favorite podcast, Cape Shit. That's right. My name is Christian, and like every week, what do I always say, Dan?
I hate Marvel movies.
Well, sure, yeah, but I also say something else at the start of every podcast every week.
Yeah, make sure to like and subscribe to our podcast via the buttons in the appropriate podcast application that you listen to the podcast Cape Shit on. That's what
that
you
works.
say every week.
Yeah,
I would say, really more specifically, tell your cool friends about this podcast. If you have a friend and you're like, hey, that guy's pretty cool, let them know the Cape Shit is a thing that exists. However, if you have a friend and when you're hanging out with them, you're thinking to yourself often, I don't really think this guy is that cool, then I don't really want your lame friends listening to this podcast.
Yeah, but I have a
That's
question,
always sort of a
though.
thing.
What
Yeah.
happens if they're like right in the middle and you can't really tell if they're cool or not yet?
Yeah.
I think the
Maybe they're
litmus test is
Okay.
listen to the intro of this podcast that just happened, and if they make it through, they're probably cool enough.
Yeah, they're probably cool as fuck, dude. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, next time you're sitting down to like a family function, play them the intro of this podcast. And if they're like, I don't get it, then assault them physically.
Yeah.
That's what I
Yes.
would say. And that's my advice. And it's a call to action. I'm calling you to action.
That's not true.
In real life.
That's your,
Not in a
in
video
real
game.
life, not in a video game. I've gone unhinged. No, hey, I'm
great.
of course joking, or am I? I'll reveal that at the end of the podcast. But for now, tell people to listen to this. You already know what it is. We watch Marvel movies, and then we talk about them at length. And as we've gotten further and further and further, just fucking in real life, that like John tag just made me laugh again. As we've gotten further in to phase 3, these podcasts have just been steadily becoming more miserable for me to edit as they slowly creep towards the 3-hour mark. But you know what, dude? We're here. We're doing it. And this week is, of course, no exception. We had a movie called Guardians of the Galaxy, written by, directed by,
hold on.
starred
No.
in by James Gunn, playing Rocket Raccoon, and
None of that is
mocapped
true.
actually as Baby Groot. It was him
none
in
of
a
it-
green
Wait,
suit.
what do you mean it's not true?
This is
and
all
they
not
shrank
true.
him
This is
down.
what happened in the credits. Did you not read the
Right,
credits?
yeah. This is
Oh,
yeah.
boy.
Did you not watch the end of credit scene where it's written in, starred by, directed
First
by?
of all,
yeah.
It's called Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume
the
2.
Winter Soldier.
The Winter Soldier, parentheses, is not Captain America.
The Winter Soldier parentheses is not Captain America. Second parentheses,
not
and
Civil
also does
War.
not appear in this movie.
Yeah.
Third parentheses, and it is not the Civil War.
Yeah.
End parentheses, end parentheses, end parentheses.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
glad
yeah.
that you wrapped up the parentheses there.
Right,
'cause I think
I know,
that
yeah.
really
Close all of them,
sells the
otherwise
title.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That at that point, it's like, oh, I'm sorry, was this movie title written by an amateur? You know, it's like,
Sure.
How would you know?
Yeah, you can't botch the syntax, dude. Then the computer doesn't.
Well,
doesn't
there's a
get it.
lot to talk
Right.
about for this
There'd
movie.
be a
so
squiggly
let's-
red line underneath it, and then
Yes,
that would
exactly.
show up on the poster, and everyone would say, "Wow, what is this?"
Yeah, except they couldn't market it on Twitter because they ran out of characters in their tweets to talk about
Right.
the title of the movie.
Right, so they had to just shorten it to Guardians of the Galaxy :
Volume 2.
2, but it's spelled TWO, which I thought was sort of a strange choice.
Yeah, it should have just been the number.
It really should have just been the symbol to, I don't know. But anyway.
And it should have been in phase 2, honestly, but here we are
that's
in
true.
phase
It's like,
3.
okay,
That's a
Guardians of
weird
the
choice to
Galaxy
make.
Volume. I'm getting deja vu. I've done this before.
Yeah, all right. So,
all right. Hey,
guess what?
back to you,
This
Dan.
movie came out May 5th, 2017. It made $863 million.
million dollars.
And that was higher than the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. So
How much did the first one make?
congratulations, James Gunn.
Quick, off the top of your head, how much did the first one make? Don't look it up. Don't look it up.
186 million.
Don't look it up.
$564 million.
Well, you
I
don't
don't
have
know
that
if
in
that's
front of
true.
you.
I'm making it up.
Oh, okay.
John, are you going to look it up?
No.
Okay,
look it up, John. Look it up.
That was it.
Look it
That
up,
was the
John.
answer.
Look it up. Look it up, John. Look it up.
It was accurately, by what Christian said earlier, it was written and directed by James Gunn. That was the sole responsibility there. He did not play Groot.
Okay. Well, I mean, hey, you know what? To each their own, but I have my own opinion on the matter.
Yeah, and this movie was also nominated for Best Visual Effects at the Academy Awards that year. Which, for me personally, I know we're going to probably...
What the fuck?
I don't know, actually. That's a good question. I could probably
Because if it was nominated, it didn't win. But I'm like, how? Like, what other movie?
What could have been better?
Like, did that better? Yeah, I don't know.
As we go through this movie, I'm interested to hear some of your guys' takes on the visual effects, because there were some things that I was like, I think this is something that will be called out by Christian and John.
Yeah, dude. Some of the VFX were horrible, and some of the VFX were like
really
insanely good.
Yeah.
Like it was a weird mixed bag. Yeah.
Yeah.
What
okay,
year
good.
was this
I'm glad
again?
that we're. What's that?
What year was this again?
2018.
2017 was when it was released.
Gotcha.
Yes.
And what is 2017 if not 2018 minus 1?
That is math.
Yeah, it is. You're right.
Sure.
That is math.
Well, good. So, talking about visual effects, we hop right into Missouri 1980, and we have a de-aged Kurt Russell and Quill's mom, which we find out, which I don't know if we heard her name in the first movie or not, but we find out her name is Meredith.
Yeah, and it turns out she's like a fucking idiot. She's like just like a bumbling dunce, which I thought was like a strange kind of character development for her. They're like, oh yeah, she's this like strong, cool, whatever in the first movie, and then this one. And you're gonna hear me do this a lot throughout this podcast. I really hated the dialogue in this movie. Now. And like I kind of like at the top, I've kind of just like started stating my opinions on things so that the audience can just be like, oh, okay, I kind of know where Christian's coming from. I actually didn't hate everything about this movie, believe it or not. There was actually parts of this movie that I dare say enjoyed even.
Whoa.
But none of that was the writing. This is truly some of the worst writing I think that we've seen ever. And literally, this is literally some of the worst writing that I have had the displeasure of having to sit throughout the entirety of us recording Cape shit. Like some of the shit was just bad.
So slight detour for a second away from Marvel. James Gunn also did Peacemaker with John Cena and all that,
which was pretty cool. I like Peacemaker.
A really good show. Did you also dislike the dialogue in that movie? Is it something that James Gunn has gotten better? Do you think that like something happened with the development of this movie? Like, what do you think
what I think
was the deal?
I think it's that James Gunn is good at doing James Gunn shit when he's allowed to do James Gunn shit. But part of that is that he needs the rated R tag on his movie. And if you have to make it PG-13, his like sort of tongue-in-cheek, like self-aware, kind of like really over-the-top cheesy stuff doesn't land because it needs to have the edge. But when it doesn't have the edge, then it's just like overly sweet.
And that's crazy because that's literally like you just ripped my own opinion out of my brain. It's that. And I'll say that, like, maybe even to elaborate, like, further on that, I completely agree with what John said. And I think that the reason the Peacemaker worked well, and again, just an elaboration on what John is saying, is that the sort of childish, kind of goofy humor is juxtaposed with like obscene violence and like just over the top, like just people's heads exploding and dudes are getting decapitated and like ripped in half and like fucking bullet holes like with blood spraying out the back of them. So then when you like have Peacemaker just do some like goofy shit, it like tonally makes the humor kind of work because it's like in Peacemaker kind of early on he's like in the apartment of this girl and he's like going to have sexual relations with the woman and it turns out that she's like an alien assassin. And it's like, like the whole thing is kind of just like, like a sex joke, or, because it's like, whatever. He's like, he's gonna go fuck, and then it turns out it's not gonna happen. It's like, it's juvenile, but it's cool because it's like insanely violent and over the top, and so it's like, whoa, it's this like big whiplash. Whereas like, in Guardians of the Galaxy, it doesn't accomplish the over-the-top insane parts well enough to make like the 14th dick joke feel like it stands out in any way. So it's like just kind of a dick joke, and it's not that good, really.
Yeah, basically just to like wrap it all up in a concise like tagline is James Gunn needs both extremes to work. When you take out one of the extremes, then it's just like an unbalanced, weird mess.
Yes, I completely agree.
Yeah, I will say that there were definitely lines in this movie that I even thought in my head, like, why did he have to say? And you know what? Most of them were delivered by Chris Pratt.
Yeah.
And I actually think that part of the thing that I think we'll get into here as we go through the movie is Chris Pratt isn't a good actor when it comes to emotional,
like serious
scenes,
dramatic
like serious
stuff.
drama and emotional scenes, right? Because I think
and this movie, just by virtue of what it is, it's this like deep introspective look at like his entire life and all of the like the heavy emotions he's had to carry with him. And I agree, Chris Pratt just like falls fucking flat as fuck, dude. Like And again, they like wrote his mom to be like really stupid. Like, she's like,
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, as we get into this intro here, we see them driving together. She's very like flowery and
she's ditzy. Yeah, she's like
flouncy.
she's like ditzy and like in love with this guy, and he's just like, I'm putting this egg on your planet to spread across everything, and she's like, well, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but I like the way you say it, and then they like make out. It's just fucking like, bleh, like
totally. I think that she ends up having Peter, obviously, and becomes then a single mother because he never comes back, right? And then she has to deal with brain cancer and all this other stuff. So I don't think there's it's unreasonable to say that the person that we saw at the start of the first Guardians movie, the mom there, couldn't have come from this same person, right?
Sure.
I mean, I think being a mom, then being a single mom, and dealing with raising a kid probably changed her quite significantly.
Sure.
Right?
You know what? That's fair. That's fine. But even still, I'm like, that's a little bit of that classic Dan headcanon that we're getting.
I'm just saying,
where
it
from
sounds
a
like Christian
perspective,
doesn't support single
To-
mothers. I think that's what I've gathered from this situation.
To
So
me, I don't think there was enough characterization either way, from like what we know about her in the first movie, that like anything they did with her in this movie, I would have been like, all right, like I would just accept it.
yeah, I guess it didn't matter. Yeah.
Word.
Yeah, well, we see, just that very basic intro scene there. And then 34 years later, we're at the Sovereign. The Guardians are here. Peter,
And also,
Gamora,
by the way,
Rocket, Drax, and Baby Groot.
can't believe she fell in love with a spaceman. Anyway, back
Yes,
to you.
we got that. Thank you so much. But it's also Kurt Russell, the spaceman, so I can believe it. I mean, did you see his hair?
Did you see that de-aging?
Yeah, the de-aging, by the way, was really good.
Yeah.
I thought.
Really good.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There was only like one little. If I'm like, hold on 1 second. Let me just.
Whoa,
this is
shit.
Dan's mimicking of Christian's nitpick corner.
Woo! All right, let's hear it.
And that is when he like. There's something about when characters turn their heads and like the way their mouth moves and they're talking when their de-aging stuff happens, that it just looks weird. Mm-hmm. So like when he like put the thing down, he's talking to her and he like moves her head, you can almost see like the mouth almost lagging slightly behind. It's kind of real. I've especially since we saw Peggy as the old grandma and kind of the mouth movements were always the one thing that were really obvious. I feel like this podcast has led me now to like looking for very specific things that don't look right with de-aging.
Totally. Yeah.
But outside of that, it was really great. So anyways, we're in the future now, 34 years later. And Drax has sensitive nipples. I think that we can right out the gate.
But but before you totally brush past it, I want to say that moment actually did stand out for me because he's like, I don't like wearing Space
Shirts.
Boys propulsion jet, whatever the fucking thing is called, because he's like it rubs against my nipples, and at that point I was like, oh no, I hope that this isn't like the caliber, like I hope this isn't setting the tone for what the entire movie is going to be from this point. And I was surely disappointed when it turns out that no, this is setting the tone for ostensibly every single scene. And the thing is, I'm not even being hyperbolic when I say that, which is kind of the insane part about this movie to me, is that it's like every single fucking scene in this movie is like undercut with some like humor line that sucks. Like, and it's a drag too, because something else I'll say, and we'll get into it a bit, but when the humor works, there's some legit, there were moments in this movie where I actually laughed out loud, sincerely.
wow.
Like, there were some parts that I thought were truly, like, actually funny.
Yeah.
But it's like 3 parts scattered amongst 200 failed attempts at humor, which just made the funny parts less impactful.
Yeah, so the intro scene, this is like right when they're about to fight the whatever that monster, that like
the giant
tentacle
octopus
like,
monster.
Right, yeah.
Call it Florgle monster or something. I
Yeah,
don't
the
know.
Florgle, dude.
Yeah, the Florgle. So this intro scene was like it's crazy how consistent this movie is all the way through, because it is exactly what you said about like the scene, like the scene being undercut with something, but like the humor doesn't work. But like the rest of the scene for me, like the way that they introduce the cast in this movie with Baby Groot plugging in the music, so we get the theme music, we get the tone, and then we get like all of the crazy CG action just in the background.
Yeah.
And it's all blurred out of focus. Our main focus is Baby Groot dancing or like just like messing around on his own. So you know what the tone of the movie is going to be, you know, like what the theme is going to be, and you understand that there's going to be crazy action, but it's not going to matter as much as the humor is going to matter in this movie.
Totally. And also, like, even to piggyback on that point, because I agree with you, you even get, like, you get cameos showcasing the personalities of each of the Guardians of the Galaxy during the thing, too. So it just completely like sets it up, because he'll be like going, and then like Rocket jumps down and he's like, Groot, you gotta fucking move, you know, and he like throws him out of the way, and then like, you know, like Gamora comes down. It's like, what are you even doing? You know, and it's like, so you also get to see like a little slice of each of the personalities of all the characters, and it just establishes everything very nicely. Yeah, I legit, credit where credit's due. Again, weird movie for me, because some parts I really liked. I really liked this intro, actually, despite not liking Baby Groot at all. Like, Baby Groot's like some fucking Baby Yoda shit. I don't fuck with it.
I like Baby Groot more than Baby Yoda.
Well, I don't like either of them. So,
oh man, we're pissing off so many people right now.
Baby Yoda at all, but
oh man, it's Grogu, by the way. Okay, that's his name.
On your...
Yeah.
Oh, okay. By the way, I love this intro scene. I mean, I think one thing that James Gunn is pretty good at is utilizing music and setting up scenes like this, like these kind of like montage scenes that, to your point, introduce all the characters. I loved it. I thought it was a great intro to the movie. You know, you got to see the credits, right? So how do you handle that?
Well, yeah, and also I think that is interesting that it manages, because it's long. Like, it's a really, really, really long way to start, but it kind of stays visually held together the entire time without really feeling like it's overstaying anything. Like, it's continually feeding you like new, information and new visual things. Yeah, it was good.
Yep.
Like, legit. No issues there. And again, I'll say it throughout probably the entirety of this podcast, like, when this movie had like high points, truly some of the best shit that I have seen in the entirety of the MCU up to this point, hands down. There were parts of this movie I legitimately was a fan of, but every time anyone opens their mouth, it just fucks the movie up for me, which is a shame. But
they wrap up this fight with the monster by Drax jumping into the monster and then thinking that the density of the skin inside is going to be less than on the outside, but Gamora ends up just actually tearing the monster down here.
Right, after a thing where, Star-Lord's like, oh, why do you have a gun? Don't you normally use don't you normally use a sword? Right, which is another establishing thing. They did the start well, and then whatever, Drax hopping into the monster, more establishing thing. It's everything in the beginning worked well.
And Gamora actually has a sword utility belt, unlike Loki, who does not have.
Right.
Other than in Thor Dark World, where he sort of Thor Dark World's the one where he doesn't have the utility belt, so he can't get his daggers, right? That's Thor Dark World.
We're not admitting anything about what happened in Thor Dark World. That's
all right.
Anyway, so they were there to steal the Annulax batteries, which Drax refers to as the Harbulary batteries.
Yeah.
And he does that twice in the movie, which was I didn't think there'd be another callback to that. But I think personally, and I know we're going very high level again, but I think out of all the characters in this movie, the comedy worked best with Drax.
Well,
see,
so okay, no, go ahead. You can go first, and then I'll piggyback on if I need to.
I don't agree. Oh shit! Can we get some air horns? Woo! Hey, what's up? It's Christian.
So shocked.
Don't agree, corner. Because here's the deal, dude. I think Drax was absolutely the funniest character in the first movie for me. But I felt like Drax was funny because he provided a very literal deadpan sort of thing to the rest of the cast. None of his shit was ever written to be funny, as in what he is saying is the punchline. It was more like his very sort of toned down literal interpretations of the situation were the punchline. And that's a slight difference from how they treat his character in this movie. Because in this movie, the shit he says is supposed to be the funny part. It's not his literal interpretation and reaction to the situation providing the humor. And just that subtle tweak of his character from the first movie to the second movie made me like Drax a lot less in this movie, because I liked it better in the first one, weirdly enough. How they handled that in the first one was funnier to me.
Yeah, so in classic fashion, I'm going to be the middle ground between you guys. And
all right.
So I think that Drax still kind of manages to be the funniest character in the movie because of the way that James Gunn likes to write jokes. It's just his dumb, well, it's not necessarily dumb, a lot of the times he is dumb, but his literal interpretation of everything kind of lends itself to James Gunn's writing. But at the same time, a lot of his jokes in this movie basically just amounts to him saying something or laughing really loudly at somebody else, and it kind of serves as a stand-in for a laugh track in a sitcom at a certain point, and I just kind of got over it within the first 30 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, it almost sort of felt like Flanderization a little bit of the character, where it's like he sort of like became a meme of what he was in the first movie, if that even makes sense. It's like in the first movie he had sort of a thing going on, and then in the second movie, like, he's almost like a bastardized version of what his character was in the first movie, in a way that tried to like lend itself to humor more. But he was already funny. Like, so you didn't need to like change what his character was to make me think he was funny. Like, I don't know, it was just like really on the nose.
It's kind of funny that, because when we watched the first one, I remember you guys saying stuff about how like Drax was the funniest character, and I still think he is. But when you guys were talking about it, like, in the back of my mind, I was like, I'm kind of fucking over Drax. But that's like from a hindsight of having watched like a couple of years of Drax humor and going back and being like, okay, I'm over the stick. But like,
no, yeah, totally. Because I'm now also, by the way, Team John, I'm over Drax humor too. But I wasn't in the first movie. I thought Drax humor in the first movie was like on point and was cool. But they changed it. They changed how they treated the character in this one.
Yeah.
I disagree. Okay, so
wait, you disagree? They changed how they treated that? I feel like that's a pretty objective look at that.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree that they've changed him, but I think it's more so on the scale of character development versus just changing his humor to change his humor. Meaning Drax became a character in this movie, not a post that like deadpan responds with nothing, essentially.
But I thought
back to jokes that are happening in the movie.
But that's the deal. That kind of was what his character was.
And if this was a movie where it was him on his own planet with the same type of people encouraging the same performance over time, then I would kind of get that. But he's part of the Guardians now. He wasn't then. He became part of the Guardians in the first movie, and it's elapsed a certain amount of time, and he's changed with that time. Clearly, by the end of this movie, Drax is a completely different character based on the development of his character, from Mantis to Baby Groot to all of that.
Maybe, and I can see where you're coming from and almost give that to you, but I'll point out that didn't happen to any of the other characters. Like, all of the other characters,
it did. Gamora?
Well,
Gamora,
no,
absolutely huge change. Nebula, huge change.
Right, yes, okay. But the way that the characters are treated within the context of the story didn't change, really. Like, Gamora is a very recognizable character based on her motivations, actions, and behaviors from the first movie. There hasn't been this rapid shift in how they treat her in the story. Like, and same thing with like Peter Quill. It's like, you know, there's time has elapsed. Perhaps relationships have gotten more deep or complicated or whatever. But still, the way that Peter Quill is treated in the context of the story is very similar in this one than it was to that one. Rocket's like, it's like all like, I'm just saying that like all of the characters are more or less like similar versions to what they were in the first movie, other than Drax, who almost sort of feels like he's just a different character now than what he was when we first saw him. Which by the way, you can headcanon away with a time has elapsed. No, but hold on. Because I'm not being argumentative. I'm actually on your side. I'm saying you can do that, and that's an acceptable answer, but I don't think that that's what they had in mind when they were writing Drax for this movie.
But I also don't think... I think that there are definitely certain scenes, and like, for example, when they're sitting down, Mantis is reading Peter's mind, and then Drax
we haven't even gotten to Mantis yet, dude. Jesus fucking Christ.
I know, we're like way out of it. But I just will say, there are certain scenes in here that I think, yes, shift his character drastically, but there are more scenes that line up with the first one for Drax than line up with your new take on Drax, in my opinion.
I disagree, because I feel like Drax is an intentional comedy relief character now, as opposed to being the deadpan guy that the comedic situations bounce off of because he's a reflection of how absurd everything is.
I think the scenes that make you think that are so intense and over the top that it puts that over. Meaning, I think there are less scenes like that, but they are more impactful because of how ridiculous Drax responds to those situations.
Yeah, but that's also kind of what I'm saying. But we can just like...
Anyway,
I just want to add one thing on to what Christian said, and then we can move on. Okay, we don't have to talk about this
forever. Okay.
So I think that you're correct in the fact that they don't treat everybody else differently, except for Drax, except for Gamora's case, because they do treat her differently in this one. In the fact that they do not have an upshot of her ass as she leaves the room in any scene.
Which was unfortunate, by the way. You know what? I've been railing against sexism in these Marvel movies, and until they brought now we're taking out the upshot of Gamora's ass, they took that off the table for this movie, and I realized now that, you know what?
It was a very important part of the dynamic.
What have I been fighting for this whole time, really?
Wow. Well, that was a lot of thoughts.
Yep.
Let's keep moving.
Yeah, we're like fucking half an hour into a podcast.
Yeah. Heyo. So great. They steal. They were there to protect the batteries, the Annulax batteries.
Oh my God,
they go back to the Sovereign, which then Peter and the Sovereign leader are hitting on each other, I guess.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I'll just throw out real quickly. Peter, I don't think he looks that attractive in this movie. I don't know for sure. Maybe Chris Pratt has this hold over people that I'm not aware of, but his facial hair was like very weak and weird and like not connected, mustache to beard and like so I don't know like how they're playing him up like that so much, because I don't feel like he's like, you know, I don't know, who do you throw in there? Like Cap, right? Like on the level of Chris Evans or something like that.
Well, I was kind of saying that is like a complaint I had about the first movie, but then it's sort of like a monkey's paw kind of thing, where it's like I kind of got my wish in this movie, where it's like, in the first movie I was sort of like, they like sort of like they kind of treat him like a sex god, but you never really see it happen, so it's weird.
Exactly.
And then in this movie, you see it happen, and I'm like, it's still weird, actually. Like, even now that I've seen it, I still don't really get it.
Yeah. I don't know.
So
He's hunky
that's
in
when
this movie,
Nebula shows up here, and she was a prisoner of the Sovereign because she was trying to steal the Annulax batteries. And so we find out that the Guardians are going to turn Nebula into Xandar because she has just a ton of bounties on her head. And that is the intro to Nebula within this movie. Rocket, I just put Rocket says some dumb shit in front of them, right when they're walking away, which we find out that he stole batteries as well. So, but he just did it better, I guess.
I really
than
like Rocket
others
in this
did.
movie, dude. Rocket.
You didn't or did?
No. I love Rocket in this movie. Rocket and Yondu are my favorite part of this movie. But the whole thing with the Rocket like not understanding how to wink, like slyly. I don't know. Something about that was really funny.
Yeah. No, I agree. I liked the performance of Rocket in this movie, and I feel like we got a lot of great Yondu stuff in this movie, and there's memorable lines and things that end up being quoted throughout the rest of the MCU, like by fans, not in the movies, but like there's merch made and like all this stuff about Yondu specifically in this movie, as Yondu being like a standout character, which is unfortunate because, spoiler alert, he dies in this one.
Well, I also, I don't know, man. I felt like it was a little ham-fisted personally, but like fucking, it's like talking about Flanderization. Am I just a Flanderization of myself at this point? Like every time Dan says anything, I'm just like, oh, actually, I did. But whatever the fuck. Like I still feel like it was quick. Like the Yondu shit, like. Basically, he gets an entire arc in the third act and then dies. And like, other than that, like he's kind of like around, like sprinkled in a little bit. And then it's like all of a sudden it's just like, oh, here's a bunch of character development. Actually, he's a really good guy. Fuck, he died. You know, and I was just kind of like, whoa, that was fast. Like, you know, I don't know.
Sure.
It didn't really have enough time to simmer with me.
I think that the beginning of his arc started like. It's like they wanted to do something right from the end of the first movie. So
Yeah.
like it kind of continues from the first movie. So it kind of starts in the first movie and then it really picks up at the very beginning of this movie and then ramps up really quick at the end.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that it was like forced into this one movie, but
I don't know. It felt like to me that it like, and I don't know if this is true or not, but it felt like by the end of the first movie, you could just tell me they didn't have a plan for what they were going to do with Yondu, and that would make sense to me. And then they figured out what they were going to do with him in this movie, like, because they just sort of like, it was just so nebulous in the first one, where it's kind of like he sort of likes Peter, like he maybe kind of likes Peter, like that's like kind of what we get from Yondu after the first movie's done. But like, because even at the end when he like steals the stone back or whatever, and Yondu kind of smirks, it's like that could even be interpreted as like he's like, he got one over on me, and he's just like respecting him as a fellow criminal. You know, you don't really know like what the depth of their relationship actually is, even at that point. But then in this one, it's like I always loved you like father, Peter Quill. Now I'm dead, you know? And it's just like, I don't know. It's just like, it's fast. Like, it's quick, you know?
Well, I think they answer the question of what their relationship is early on in this movie when we see Sylvester Stallone and find out that Yondu has actually been exiled from the Ravagers because of what he had done with Quill, which was taking Quill in, not
also,
following
by the
Ravager
way,
code.
Before we get too far into this, one thing I do just want to point out.
We haven't gotten anywhere in this yet, by the way.
I know we haven't gotten anywhere. We're about to gloss over something I just thought was very funny, which is just this like random scene where Peter Quill was like changing his shirt, just kind of.
Oh yeah, that's my next bullet point. Shirtless, ripped Chris Pratt.
I think this is the last movie that he's in where he like actually made a point to be ripped, and then
because it's like he got like jacked, and then he's like, well, like you gotta like show. So it's just this funny thing where I'm just like, he could have just been wearing a shirt here, you know? It's like literally they only have him not wearing a shirt just so that you can be like, oh, look, he is a superhero because he's on He's like a steroid guy, so that's super, you know.
And again, that kind of brings up my point from earlier. Is like, I don't believe the Playboy thing for Chris Pratt. And that might be because I was a fan of Parks and Rec, and I just see Andy Dwyer in him still. But also, he doesn't wear a superhero costume. Like, he always wears a jacket, so you never really see it anyways.
Are hot, is what you're saying.
No, I'm saying you don't need to be ripped when you're wearing that jacket. Is what I'm saying. So
but I'm also saying like Peter Quill is like just like a human.
Yeah, some people just got that charm, you know.
But like he doesn't need to be jacked. Like there's like some
exactly. That's my point.
There's some characters where I'm just like, okay, Captain America like needs to be jacked. Like Falcon, sure, he's like, you know, an ex-military dude. Like for his character to really be sellable, like he kind of needs to be jacked. Like Scarlett Johansson, you know, she needs to be like Lady Hollywood shredded in order to be doing like the flips and whatever the fuck. But like, you know, Star-Lord, I'm just like, he doesn't need to be like a steroid guy. So it's like weird that we've had two movies where they're just like, but he's unimaginably ripped, and it's just like, who fucking cares?
Yeah,
like,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't
matter.
Yeah. And in fact, they really make sure that it doesn't matter, because then we find out he's half god, and so it doesn't matter whether he's ripped either way, because he has literally powers to be immortal and can do whatever he wants, apparently.
Yeah, which kind of like, I suppose. Yeah, well, yeah, but he doesn't know that at the point that he is ripped.
Right. Okay, so we're now 4 minutes into this movie, and the Sovereign...
and we're like 50 minutes into a podcast. Okay.
Holy shit! All right. Well, all right. So what I can say here is, the Sovereign shows up. They know that they stole the batteries. Like, we find out that all the ships are remotely piloted by the Sovereign, which was kind of an interesting idea to ensure that they didn't have to sacrifice any one of their people to go after the Guardians. But what I didn't really click with here, pun intended, was they're like, the nearest jump portal is 47 clicks away. So it's time for a arbitrary countdown through a terrible asteroid field that only the best pilots in the world could make it through.
Yeah.
Which,
And also that line
yeah.
sucked.
Yeah,
Like,
so
that was fucking awful, dude.
Like no
God
matter how
damn.
you read that line, even if
Because
you're the greatest
bad.
actor on the
Yeah,
planet,
yeah, I'm going to
the problem
hate you.
is that Gamora said it, I believe,
Yeah.
right?
Yes,
and
it was
the
Gamora.
problem if
Drax
Rocket said it, I think that could have sold it better. But I don't see Gamora being a person to say, and only the best ship pilot in the world could make it through that in a not like a it wasn't even necessarily in
It
a
wasn't
sarcastic way.
It was not. It was like she was
providing
to make it
real
through
info.
that. You'd have to be the greatest pilot in the universe.
you'd have to be rank 1 on the leaderboards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and so I guess my point here was that's one, and then number two was like, oh, how unfortunate that all of this is happening in this sequence of events and lining up that they're 47 clicks away. But later on, it seems like every jump portal is right next to each other when Yondu and Rocket are trying to get to Ego.
Well, also, not to mention, they make it through the portal, or they make it through the asteroid field, and then on the other side, like, all the ships are just around them anyway, and they're like, they went around the asteroid. Oh,
Yeah.
no. And it's like, that doesn't make fucking sense, dude.
Yeah,
like,
it doesn't.
Again, like, writing in this movie, bro, and a lot of this shit was, like, pretty on the nose, too. Like, you know, one of my kind of complaints I've had about Marvel movies since we've been watching is, like, I really dislike the, like, spell shit out to the audience kind of thing, where it's like something happens and then one of the characters in the film has to point to the thing that just happened and explain it. Like, and we get, like, a lot of moments like this too, where it's like, you know, there's one point where it's like Rocket and Peter are arguing in this quantum asteroid field, and Rocket's like, I'm gonna shit in your pillowcase, basically, and he's like, you're gonna put your turd in my pillowcase, and he's like, it won't be my turd, it'll be Drax's. And then Gamora is like, we're about to die, and this is what we're discussing, like, in, like, a fucking, like, sitcom-y kind of thing. And again, it's like so much that in this movie, and I just don't like it.
But then,
like, at all.
but then they follow that up with Nebula. Like, the back of the ship gets blown out, and then Nebula kind of drops to the ground, and she just screams, "You idiots!" And that works way better.
Yes.
To like to
Totally.
function as that part in the dialogue, but
Completely.
Gamora's lines, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Weird.
curious, like the runner joke throughout the whole part of this ship and also in the next scenes as well is Nebula wanting that root, whatever the root vegetable thing was.
Yeah.
Something.
Dude, didn't land with me, and also, but I'll say this: it's like, again, this fucking, like, shoving this fucking thing where it's like, it's kind of funny the first time, maybe, when she's like, it's not right, you know, and then, like, the second time when, you know, Drax is like, it's not right, it's like, whatever, it's a callback, like, but then later, like, she has it and she takes a bite of it and it's like, it's not right, and I'm just like, yeah, I get it, dude, like,
No,
like, fucking,
I
like,
think
move
that's-
past.
I liked that. And that was for me then, because I
that
liked
was
the
for you.
payoff of her not giving a shit and still eating it. And
Right.
then in this, like, very intense where she's got the focus of the entire Ravager crew on her. And then she eats a bite of it, like, kind of to be whatever, a badass, and then spits it out and says it's not ripe. That landed with me personally.
I don't really have strong feelings either way. I just kind of, my personal taste, I would have wished Nebula was like the non-humorous character in the, because nobody is non-humorous in this movie. Everyone has a joke. And
Right.
that was Nebula's joke.
Which, by the way, in the first movie, Drax was the fucking straight man who didn't have the punchline, so it, like, all the absurdity, like, worked better. Because I agree. I think that the antics of the Guardians of the Galaxy are way funnier when you have one dude. Like, it doesn't matter who. You just need someone there who isn't, like, insane. who then is like, commenting on how ridiculous these people are. And that is like a funny bit that you can keep going, which was Drax's job in 1. He's not there anymore. And I agree, if they had made that Nebula's thing, I think Nebula could have been a very funny character. But instead, they give Nebula a fucking punchline. Like, everyone has a fucking punchline. It's just like, goddamn, dude, stop.
Great. Well,
we're 3 hours into this podcast
Jesus
now.
Christ. I mean, the thing is like, I know that we're talking a lot about these lines, and I think it is important because it does like show a pattern of how this movie kind of was laid out in regards to some of its dialogue. But I also did really like this movie. I actually really liked it, even though I agree with you on some of these like line deliveries and things like that. Like I also noticed them, and if I notice them, it's a problem, right? But so okay. Anyway, so they get out of the
long story
short, they crash land on
he decides
this.
not to be a god anymore. Yondu dies at the end.
And then that's it. Yeah. But they crash land. Okay, look, this is it's terrible, but it's like, the other thing I kind of didn't understand in this movie was the physics of these ships, because I feel like they were stronger than anything I've ever seen in any MCU movie. Like, the amount of times that these ships would get shot at, how many ships were up against, the Sovereign ships. There were like 100 of them versus this one Guardian ship, and then eventually they said, we don't care if it explodes now, just kill them. And they still can't kill the Guardians. Like, they're about to get in the jump portal or whatever the hell it is, and every Sovereign ship is laying down direct fire on this Guardian ship, and it still doesn't explode. And then they land on this planet, which I think Burhart is the name of the planet, and it goes through 500 trees, and like, it's still fine until it...
Yeah, which actually, by the way, I'm going to say highlight of the movie to me, Gamora holding onto the ship, holding the line with Drax on the end. Like, smash. That was cool. Like, legit. Yeah, that was like, that was sick. Like, honestly, like, that was like, I wish that the movie focused on those parts more, because every time they tried to do something epic like that, it actually like worked quite well in basically every context in this movie. It was just, again, when people, but, and to your point, I agree. Like, I sort of thought that they would just be like fucked. And then their thing is that they're just kind of like, oh, Rocket, fix the ship. And he's like, okay. And it's like, wait, what? Like, this is like a fixable thing that you guys can just do.
The power wash simulator spray thing that just sprays the ship back together.
Yeah, dude, exactly.
I just, I don't know. There was just stuff about that whole ship crashing part that just didn't connect for me, I guess. The ship strength after being shot 5 billion times, going through 500 trees, and then they weren't even split up, and Gamora was able to hold on to Drax the entire time, and they were all just together at the end of that. It didn't hit well for me personally, but now they're on the ship, or on the planet, and then now we get Kurt Russell. He shows up in his white pod that flies, and now we get our first intro.
Oh yeah, it's his white pod that flies.
I mean, it's like, it has no engines. It's just like this like egg.
Yeah, it's
right.
Egg.
Sure.
Goes through space pretty easily. I mean, he's a god, so I guess he can just do whatever he wants.
Right.
But this is where we see Mantis and Ego really interacting with the Guardians for the first time, and very quickly we just get the reveal, hey, I'm your dad. There's no waiting on this, which is good. I'm glad they didn't kind of try to carry that on for too long. But obviously we end up finding out that the reason they don't is because Ego is really the main not only character, but also the main villain of this movie as well.
Yes.
Which was, I thought, a great intro to this. We jump straight to Contraxia, which is another random planet where we catch up with the Ravagers before we get a quick Howard the Duck appearance on screen.
He's there.
Very, very quick. And I kind of forgot that Sylvester Stallone is in this movie, and this is the first moment where we see Stakar, who's the leader of another Ravager faction, and kind of sets up here the story that Yondu is, they still call him the captain, they're Ravagers, that they have a ship and all this, but we kind of find out that Yondu has been exiled from the Ravagers in general here.
Yeah, and I gotta say, like, visually, again, like these scenes are like kind of part of the thing where I'm like, I liked this a lot. Actually, I thought it was fucking cool. I thought all the Ravagers looked cool. Like, they really do sort of look like a ragtag gang of space ruffians. I thought that they're all like distinct enough from one another that you almost sort of like felt their personalities a little bit, like without even the background characters. And I thought like the yellow sex robots were cool, and like them sort of like, being thrown against this sort of like pure white background because it's all snow. It's like all the colors on everything that wasn't white were like just popping out of the screen. Like, legit, like, cool. Like, again, like, visually, this movie did a lot of really cool shit, and shit way better than Guardians 1 did too, by the way. Like, honestly, like, where it needed that, like, shit, it was fucking great. But then again, like, you get like Sylvester Stallone up in there, and it's like him talking is like fucking horrible to try and listen to, like, he like it's cool because he reunites with Yondu for the first time in a while, it seems, and he says the prophetic line, "You ain't just like us, but you'll never know the sound of you." And it's like, fuck, dude, you could have really gotten anyone but there you go. You really could have gotten anyone other than Sylvester Stallone. It's like, again, just like this shit where I'm like, every single time dialogue needs to matter, it's like it just fucking like something just gets in the way of it doing anything for me.
Yeah, I think that's the reason the first time I watched this movie, I don't think I understand anything he said either because I didn't have subtitles.
Fuck no, dude.
And so like I was watching it with subtitles this time, and he says something about like, oh, the Ravagers will never like sound the horn of victory. I don't know what the fuck. Basically, he's like, we're not gonna play the Ravager funeral rites for you when you die. Which I thought was like,
oh, see,
a weird
I
thing.
like I literally did not know that's what. Like,
yeah,
I was only half joking when I said that I like didn't know what Sylvester Stallone said. Like, I couldn't hear him.
Yeah,
like,
so basically he was just saying what happened at the end of the movie where they.
Yeah,
where
so
they
that's
all play
actually kind of an impactful line,
Yeah.
considering that they do, spoiler
Yeah, and
alert,
I
sound
didn't catch
the
it either.
Ravager horn. Which also, how did they like know? Whatever, we're getting ahead of
Well,
ourselves.
at the end, Rocket says that he contacted everyone and told them what Yondu did.
Right, but then also they just like implicitly believe him, and then they're like, "Oh shit, we were wrong." And like, he did still sell children
still
into
did.
slavery,
Yeah, but he didn't know.
which is
whatever.
what they were
We'll
mad
get
at him
to it
for
later.
in the
It's fine.
first place. But yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Oh man. And then the Sovereigns show up right at the end of that scene there to propose a.
Okay, and by the way, the Sovereign showing up again, dude. Fucking 4-hour podcast. I'm the one that needs to edit this, so whatever the fuck. I guess you're the one that has to, or no one will listen to it, and this has now
Sure,
just
that's
become a
also
very
possible.
self-contained, just the three of
This
us.
is
kind
just
of thing.
for us, yeah.
Just for us now. But again, dude, like this shit where it's like the Sovereign is like, they're sort of like head commander who, again, you want to talk like visuals in this movie? Visually, that shit was cool. And I also liked how every time you saw her, she had like a different hairstyle. Like, and it just like, and again, it's not like this thing where it's like too on the nose and everyone's talking about it. It's just visually, she's different every single time, suggesting that it might even be like a different body or a different entity. Like, because you don't really know like what their thing is, so it like leaves this fun sort of mystery as to like what the Sovereign, they kind of seem like a hive mind, maybe, like,
Yeah.
And so it's one thing in different bodies. Like, it's cool, like legit, like their whole, and even the like the rolling out of like the carpet is like cool, and then they like stick in this like dumb gag where it's like the carpet like won't unfold, and it's this like moment where everyone's awkwardly like, I don't know, what do we do? But then there's no payoff, because then they just like unfurl the entire carpet, and it's like, what was the fucking point of that scene? Like
that. I think the reason that, because throughout the entire movie they're just kind of like a fly buzzing around and causing like inconveniences throughout the story.
Right.
They kind of are the plot engine, but like not in a very epic way. And I think that James Gunn was doing that intentionally to give them the sort of like stormtrooper effect, where they're supposed to be like this vast in numbers but highly and like super like egotistical, but they're also very inept, and like they can't, is that the right word, inept? They can't do what they are trying to do. They're like
but then it also like begs the question as to like, if they can't do what they're trying to do, how the fuck do they get this like vast empire that like apparently has like insane military might and enough resources to like completely redo their fleet after it's destroyed by ego?
I think
why don't
that's
you ask America?
Why?
Yeah,
because they're rich. Like, I think that's it. They've been able to spend the money and develop the technology because it's an inherently rich planet, which we're not going to get the backstory. We're not going to find out why.
Until Guardians 3.
Yeah, maybe we will in Guardians 3, because there's a little teaser at the end of the movie.
Sure.
Which we are now 4%
and that's
into
the
this
podcast.
Movie. Yeah. Jesus Christ. Oh, man. Mantis. We just got to Mantis because she's just now introduced herself with a very weird smile.
But not before Ego says, "Excuse me, I gotta take a whiz," which I also wrote down. Did not like that. Anyway, back to you, Dan.
Okay, great. I just figured we could leave the whiz out, but I guess it does line up with your opinion of the movie so
I wrote
far,
down so many quotes.
You basically have a screenplay written down.
It's like, fuck, man.
And so to your point here, Drax plays a joke on Mantis by telling Mantis to pet Rocket, which then Rocket bites her.
Yes.
So yeah, definitely on your side. Get it.
Yeah.
With the change in Drax. Quill tells everyone that he used to tells Gamora that.
By the way, Dan's on my side. Just want to. All right, back to you.
Okay. No, my point was that that's one
out
of
one
all the other
point. For me, thank you very. I will receive my point now. I appreciate that.
This is where we find out that Quill used to tell people that David Hasselhoff was his father. Specifically, the David Hasselhoff from Knight Rider was his father, because he didn't know the true story. Which now he's finding out. Oh, my father is actually a god. And so Drax, Gamora, and Quill decided they're going to go with Ego and Mantis to his planet, while Nebula, Groot, and Rocket stay behind to fix the ship, where we see Rocket with his power washer fixing this ship that has literally broken in half.
Yeah.
So again, not 100% certain.
It's fine.
Right, and also they do this weird thing, like right around here, that I noticed, where when they decide that they're going to go back to like the Ego planet, you get a slow motion walk of all of them leaving their ship, like going on to Ego's ship, and then it just kind of like stops. And it's just this weird I don't know why they chose to do it like that in that moment, but you get this like, it's this like epic, like they're all like, ooh, and then they walk like 5 feet, but it's not like a joke. Like but it should have been like, if you're gonna put humor anywhere, that would be funny, but that wasn't. But that was serious, and it was like, what the fuck was that? And then they're just on the ship now.
Yep. Well, this is where we get Mantis describing what her powers are, which is, I think, potentially the first time we've ever had a character in the MCU sit down and describe exactly how their powers work. Yep. And so that we know exactly what the impact
No surprises there with Mantis.
Well, true, but I guess the question is, you've complained many times about the power balance in the MCU and being unsure of what things are.
Dude,
Was this a better approach to a new character?
It is a better approach to a new character. However, air horns, please.
Yep, here we go.
Right. Woo! Welcome to Christian's However corner. However, I'm very sick of like mind control being a fucking thing.
I knew you were gonna say this because I was listening intently to Mantis's description because I was like, oh no, if she says mind control,
right? She doesn't say mind
that's
control.
Her power. She actually specifically says that she can't control minds.
Right. Well, but she can because she grabs Gamora and goes, "You are afraid," and then Gamora's like, "I'm afraid now." That's mind control.
No. She doesn't make Gamora afraid. She reads that Gamora is afraid, which makes Gamora jump back.
No. That's not what happens.
100% yes.
No. She influences emotion. She says that in her like rundown of the thing, which is like, literally,
that's objectively true.
That's objectively what happens in that scene, dude.
Go.
I don't think that Mantis makes Gamora afraid.
No, that's what she does.
Her emotions.
Yeah, because that's her thing. Is she can make other people feel emotions, but for like short periods of time.
She can amplify.
No, she makes Gamora afraid.
Emotions,
100%.
which is why
that's what happens in that
which
scene.
is why that she explains that she can only put Ego to sleep when Ego is ready to be put asleep. That's a later point that Mantis makes about her powers.
Right,
which
until she just puts him to sleep anyway. Which she does at the end.
She has found a new capability to control Ego in that moment.
Okay.
That's not, no.
But that is mind control.
Also, Drax is like, oh, do me. And then she like just tells him to go to sleep and he sleeps. So.
And he does, yeah.
Yeah.
But he was ready to be put asleep
No, he
by
wasn't
Mantis
because he didn't know what she was
going
to do.
So.
Yeah.
I
he
don't know.
Pretty lively.
It's a point for Christian, bro. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to have to do this to you, Dan. That's a point for Christian.
I disagree.
But
Okay,
hey, you know what though?
Hold on.
No, I'm going to extend an olive branch to you really quick. But
I just looked it up.
Okay.
I looked it up because I was curious to see if this was addressed at all, and turns out there's a whole article about this specific moment.
Yeah,
of course there fucking is. Jesus Christ.
Okay. The theory states that Mantis, who can affect emotions, could also use her powers to share old Gamora's memories with her. Wait, to make her trust the other Guardians. Shot down that response. James Gunn shut down that response theory on Twitter. We see them work in reverse when she fills Gamora with fear.
When she
but
fills
memories are thoughts, not emotions.
Gamora.
She cannot read or send thoughts. Only emotions.
Okay,
so
but
that's not mind control.
Okay, yeah, fine. Well, I mean, now you're just being pedantic. It's like
I'm just saying what James Gunn, the writer of this movie, is saying about Mantis.
Yeah, well, I don't trust the writer of this movie at all. By the way, anything the writer of this movie, anything the writer of this movie says could just be thrown the fuck out, dude. I do not think that this guy has like good opinions on shit.
Okay. Well, anyways, we are now 6% into this movie.
Woo!
Okay, so we this is the scene here where she reads Quill's emotions and says that he's feeling romantic sexual love for Gamora, in which Drax amps up the awkwardness of this situation by hysterically laughing at Quill.
Although I would say that that's cutting the awkwardness of this situation, because that is the like part and parcel every scene in this movie thing, is that if something dramatic happens, you can't let the tension build. You immediately need to cut it with like a funny joke. And
it depends on whose perspective you're feeling in that moment, though, because if you're looking at it from Quill's perspective, it got significantly more awkward for him than it was before.
Yeah, I suppose that's fair. I just think from like the audience perspective and like the energy of the scene, like it like takes the scene from a serious note to a humorous one, like by, and and by the way, we've already seen that a million times up until this scene, and it will not stop happening throughout the remainder of the movie either.
Okay. Well, now that we've determined that Mantis cannot do full mind control,
I don't know that's what we've determined.
No, that's James Gunn said it. So it's canon. This is where the Ravagers show up where Rocket, Groot, and Nebula are, and there's a lot of them showing up here, which I didn't realize, I guess, how many there were, but maybe I just didn't understand. But anyway, so Rocket has prepared for this moment and has trapped all of the areas outside of the ship.
By the way, this whole scene was fucking cool. And again, it's the weird whiplash I keep having with this movie is that some parts of this movie suck so fucking bad that it's just like, what the fuck am I watching? And then you get like Rocket jumping around the trees, like blowing people up, and it's dope. Like that was fucking good. That was like actually really good. So it's like, again, peppered throughout this movie are like things I really liked, and I really liked this Rocket part. And again, I think that just visually the Ravengers are really cool, and I actually even think that like the humor kind of works in this scene because it's like very in character for Rocket, like when he is like blowing them into the air and then they're like falling back down and then he's like blowing them into the air again. Like it's like he's just kind of fucking with them, and that's like what Rocket would do, so it works. This whole thing worked.
There's no dialogue. It's the same thing why the intro scene worked.
True, actually.
There was really no dialogue.
They stopped talking. The movie
also, actually, I think you stumbled on something because also when Gamora's holding Drax at the thing, he's just getting hit by trees. I liked it.
She doesn't cut it by going like, I don't know how much longer I can hold on to Drax while he's flying out of the back.
No, I think you're right though. Is that it's like, if she had said anything, I probably would have liked it less. But same thing with this Rocket part. I just thought it was good. Like it's just visually good.
Basically,
and you actually just kind of blew my mind because I'm thinking back to every single part of this movie that I really liked, and it's all parts with no dialogue, and I hadn't even made that connection until you just said that, but that's very true. Yeah.
Whenever they let the movie actually be the movie, the visual effects are really great, the fighting sequences are pretty good, the music stuff is actually really good too, really when it's just montages of scenes with music and all of that. The soundtrack in this movie was also really great, and I thought fit well across the whole thing.
I thought the soundtrack in this movie was way better than the soundtrack in the first one, because the soundtrack in this movie were sort of like, it was like iconic 80s, but like not the iconic 80s shit you would just expect to be the soundtrack.
It's like the stuff that people actually listened to.
Where it's like the first one was really on the nose, and then this one it wasn't really like deep cuts because it was still like all popular shit, but it's just like not what you would think would be in the movie with the 80s soundtrack, and it like tied the whole thing together really nicely, like really good.
Well, we end the scene with Nebula shooting the fin off of Yondu's head as a coup starts to form to take over the Ravagers, because they are realizing that Yondu has a soft spot for Quill, because he talks about wanting to just sell the batteries and not claim the bounty on the Guardians, which the crew of the Ravagers are not happy with that situation and start to go up against him. So now Yondu's taken out. Nebula has kind of made an impact right away on the rest of the Ravagers.
Yeah, and by the way, that shit was fucking cool as fuck, actually, because it's like this total like misdirection of the scene. Like, it's like when he gets the fin shot off his head, it's like, oh fuck, because you kind of think it's going in a different direction, and then that's just all a red herring for Nebula's whole arc. Like, that was cool. I liked that.
Yeah, agreed. And that was all a non-dialogued moment.
Legit. Yep.
Yeah. And so yeah, we're back on. Now we've
Yeah,
made
like
it
if
to
she had
Ego's
shot
planet.
him and then had like blown smoke off of her gun and been like, got him.
Got him.
You know, like it just
and then said that shot was ripe. Right?
Oh my god.
I would.
I
You know
know.
what though? Actually, I might have liked that.
Yeah, I know. Because it would have been so bad. It would have been on the other end of the
Yeah,
spectrum
exactly.
where you laugh for it.
It would have
Okay.
reminded me of like something you would say to me, and then I would have. Yeah.
okay.
Anyway.
All right. Well.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back now, and Ego is taking them to his planet, and now we've arrived. Right, they're there.
Yes.
This planet looks awesome.
Yeah.
Like the moment where they're coming in, they get off the ship, and like the ship is again just this like nebulous orb that can form and do whatever it wants, and it like the platform just like comes out of the ship and it sends them across. And I was looking in that moment to see, wow, that's because it just looks really cool. You see this like sunset and you see them floating over the planet, and it looks awesome. I didn't notice any like green screen craziness in this moment here. I just thought, wow, this all visually looks really great. The design of this planet that they've made for Ego.
Yeah, I agree actually, and I also think that it almost sort of stands in a weird way in stark contrast. It might sound like a weird comparison, but it almost sort of reminded me of like Asgard, how like Asgard has been portrayed and how much like better the technology has gotten, because you have these like giant sprawling landscapes, but it's all serviceable. Like I don't have to suspend disbelief to imagine it, it's like it just like worked well, like from what you could see in front of you.
Yeah, also the overall look of Ego's planet is like weirdly surrealistic in the way that it does feel CG generated, but that's kind of redundant, CG generated. But it fits the tone of like, because he is like a god that is just creating literally whatever he wants. Like these things don't have to look real because they don't actually exist in the real world. Like these could never exist in the real world. So
Sure.
I think it just lends aesthetically to it really well.
Yep. And so we get the whole story of Ego. Where
Right.
he was
Except
created...
for there were parts of Ego's story that, and I think I can actually just sort of chalk this up to legitimately just bad writing, because there were like things that just were odd to me. I think one of the things, and this is like more of just like a smaller nitpick, but I'm like, why is Ego like old now? Like it's like he like purposefully, like he lives forever, and he like made his body, so he like wants his body to age or whatever, I guess. They don't really like talk about it, but it's just something I noticed where it's like he's like aging like, but he's not aging like a normal human, because all this shit happened like with the mom a long time ago. So it's like he's like aging, but like at a slower rate than like a human would, but he's still like doing it, but he like wants the human experience. But then he's also talking. So that's like one thing. But then there's like, he's like, okay, so Ego's story is he blinked into existence once upon a time, and he doesn't know where he came from, but now he's here. And then he just was floating around in the vast emptiness, and then he slowly began to make things around him once he realized that he could, which is where the planet comes from. And then he created a form, right? But he's like alone in the universe. But then he says the line, I wanted to understand the human experience, but up until that point, he hadn't ever run into another sentient life form. Like that's so he created the body before he came into contact with anything else. Specifically says that he wanted to like have the human experience, but he has no context for what humans are. He hasn't actually met them yet. So he just sort of arbitrarily decides upon a form of a being that he's never even conceptualized. Then he goes out into the galaxy, and then he starts finding sentient life. But humans aren't even the first thing that he finds, but he just like has a human body, and the whole thing was just like strange to me. Like the pacing didn't feel right based on his own backstory that he was giving.
Agreed.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think it was poor writing, because I get where they were going with it, but I
Me
had
too.
to headcanon all of the like timeline there.
Yeah, no, totally.
Right?
Yeah, because because
totally.
the timeline, like, and like, this isn't even a like, haha, like, oh, me and Dan should go into debt. This is like, this is like beyond like meta shit for this podcast. Like, just this scene was written badly.
Poorly.
Like,
Yeah.
it just like
Totally.
the timeline that he lays out does not make sense based upon the events that actually happen, and no one is like, wait, that's weird. Like, and then we just move past it. So whatever.
Yeah, there's a bunch of headcanon you could throw in there, but it's like, what's the point?
Okay. Also, around this point too, we get the classic dialogue between Drax and Ego, where Drax wonders if he
has a penis.
if Ego has a penis. Which he responds that he does, and there's more to it than that, I guess. But it just stood out to me as, again, just dumb. Like, just dumb. Like, I don't know, man. Like, so much of the attempts at humor in this movie were just not great. And we haven't even actually really gotten to like the good ones yet, but there's two standout moments in this movie that actually made me laugh. But but I'm going to keep those close to my chest. I'll reveal them as we get to them. We're not there yet, but yeah.
Ego reveals that he knew that it was him after hearing that there was a human that was able to hold an infinity stone in his hand without dying. And that's what led Ego to Quill in the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right. Which also sort of explains how actually quite a bit about the first movie. If Peter Quill is an Eternal in that movie, there's a lot of shit that I was like, what the fuck, dude? That like, if you watch that movie, but keep in mind that he's an Eternal, then I'm like, okay,
A Celestial.
Fine. Celestial. Yeah, then I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Well, yeah, and I think both John and I were like not saying that to you specifically, even though we both knew like, yeah, he's half something else.
Yeah.
Right,
like,
totally. Yeah, like even when
Quite
he's like
odds to it in the first movie too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also if you know the comics, you know that Ego is his dad.
Right.
So like, and Ego's a planet and a god and blah blah blah. Anyway, so
and actually,
it was like a quiet secret.
Yeah, and so weirdly enough, I'll actually say the next part of the movie might actually be my favorite part of the entire movie. Like from the beginning to the end, we end up back on Yondu's ship. There has been a mutiny that has taken place after Nebula has shot your boy's fin off. So he no longer has control of his little whistle arrow thing. And we sort of get this scene of like, so Rocket's like tied up in a room. Baby Groot's there, but he's sort of useless because he's, just like a little
He's a dumb
thing.
little baby.
He's like a dumb little baby thing.
Dumb little baby, yeah.
And Yondu, at this point, thoroughly defeated. He's just sort of sitting there, soaking it in. And we get one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie. And not only in the entire movie, but in the entirety of the MCU up till this point.
Is it where you realize that they weren't just putting one person out of the airlock, but that they killed half the crew?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude. Yeah, when it shoots him out into the airlock and he's like slowly dying in the vacuum of space, and then the camera pans and you just see this like wave of bodies like floating away from the ship. Like, and so for me, right, like I like, like grotesque shit, like, horror movies and, gore in, some violence in my media, whatever. But I'm saying like, and so there are things that like, for instance, in like Civil War, when Iron Patriot gets shot out of the sky. I'm just gonna like that shit on principle because I think that stuff is fun in movies. But this goes beyond that because this wasn't just like, oh, the horror of someone getting kicked out of an airlock. Isn't it cool to watch a guy die? I just like cinematically, this was fucking
reveal.
dope, and it also doubled as like a cool reveal where you realize that they've already like purged half of the crew, and so then it also makes sense that the only people there are the ones that aren't trying to like stop the mutiny because it's not like the mutiny is improv. It's like the mutiny has been successful when you see it there. Like that was just tight. Like that was just good. That was a good ass scene. That was fucking cool, dude.
Yeah, and again, no dialogue.
And, yeah, and also no dialogue. Yep.
And also when we follow up with this scene later on, once he gets the prototype fin and all this other stuff, there's another no dialogue mass murdering
which
scene.
is actually that might be my favorite part of the movie.
There you go. See?
This might be my second favorite part. Yeah.
You know, maybe you should just stick to watching silent films instead.
I know,
of
dude. Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
Don't even risk it anymore.
Yeah.
We do find out that the new Ravager leader and name is Taserface. It's metaphorical, so
yeah.
Don't
Which
worry
also
about it.
that was my least favorite part of this whole thing was like the fucking taser face back and forth. Like it just yeah. So visually, yes. Dialogue, no. Bad dialogue. Don't want to hear it. Just more visuals, please.
I didn't remember this point here. This is where we also find out more about Nebula's backstory as she asks for a ship to get out of here so that she can go find Gamora and take her down. We find out that she and Gamora would constantly be put into battle when they were younger as kids by Thanos. And whenever Nebula would lose, Thanos would replace a piece of her with machinery to try to make her Gamora's equal.
Right, but also, I'll just point out, you can't just have like a cool dramatic moment because after hearing this whole monologue, the guy says, yeah, I was talking about a pretty necklace or something.
Yeah, I know.
And again, it's like,
tough.
Stop doing that. Like, just
stop.
fucking let the tension be the tension, bro.
Yeah, I have a lot of
it's tough,
mixed thoughts on that scene because on one hand, it is like a very serious moment, and then you play it off with a joke. But on the other hand, it is a bit of exposition that just kind of comes out of nowhere. So I feel like he kind of put in a joke as like a meta aside, like to just balance it out. Be like, yeah, I know that I'm putting like some random exposition in here, so I'm gonna have to also supplement it with a joke so that you don't.
Yeah,
think
well,
about it
also
too much.
Nebula is like the random exposition out of nowhere character from this point forward in the movie because now, like, essentially, and skipping ahead, we'll get there, but it's like every time you see her, she's like, "Here's more of my backstory no one asked me about," and that just continues to happen.
Yep. And then we go back to Ego and Peter, who are talking about Peter's mom. Peter is not sold on Ego in this moment, and so
I'm so stoked because we're not quite there yet, but we're almost to the worst scene in the entire movie. We're so close to it right here.
Yeah, well, he talks about that he had to come back to his planet regularly to maintain his human form.
Yep.
And he didn't want to go back to an Earth where she wasn't alive.
Right,
Which,
and also
forget that you have a son there, by the way. Like,
right, and
okay.
also he says the line, "I've made many mistakes, Peter, but you're not one of them." And it's also this thing where I'm like, how the fuck do you know? It's just like it's like, what? You don't know this fucking guy, like, you know. And
well, it doesn't make sense in that moment. But then we find out why it makes sense later.
I think it does make sense. It just doesn't make sense in the way that you think it should.
Yeah.
Because he's talking about
makes sense because
procreating and then coming up with a
you
child.
know what? You won me over. That's fair. If you take that not as him giving his son reassurance, but more saying, hey, you're the battery so that I can expand everywhere, fine. Yeah, sure. Okay.
All right. Point to me.
Right.
And to
Okay.
John.
But now
Now it's 100-1.
Now it's not 100-1, actually.
No, I meant to you, actually.
Oh, okay. To me, sure. Yeah. Okay. It is 100-1. Yes. No, but we get the dumbest, and maybe not even in just this movie, perhaps in all of cinema history. I might throw down the gauntlet.
Here it is. Go ahead.
He's like, I can make energy, but you also have the power to make energy, Peter. And he's like, oh, I don't know. He's like, close your eyes and think about the center of the planet, and you will also be able to make energy. And he closes his eyes, and then his hands begin to glow. And he's like, he gets a little scared, and he stops. And then he goes like, no, that's good. Do that again, but focus this time, Peter. And then he does. And then he makes an energy ball, and then him and his estranged father play catch on the planet as the camera slowly zooms out.
Yeah, and then after they play catch, he goes up to Peter and he's like, Peter, now remember, with great power comes great
responsibility. Dude, I was just like, I was like watching that, and by the way, Allison did not fall asleep during this movie, and literally, she looked at me unprompted and was just like, what the fuck is happening?
Okay. See, the thing is like, it's so crazy because I think we're spending more time in this movie talking about the dialogue than any other movie in the MCU we've watched.
Oh yeah.
The problem is that all of the non-dialogue parts are so good in this movie that I want to be clear. I liked this movie.
No, this movie is one of my favorites in the MCU.
I liked it. But when you actually think about the dialogue for more than 4 seconds, it falls apart, but not enough to bring down the entire movie. But you have to talk about this.
I know.
You can't let it go by.
Yeah, it's like, and again, dude, this one, I keep saying it, but it's like, it was crazy watching this, how much I went from this is cool, this is actually the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Oh, this is cool. This is fucking stupid. This is cool. It was every single time the scene would change. It was like, what's it going to be? Is it going to be one of those fantastic, memorable ones? Or is it going to be Peter playing fucking catch with his dad? It's insane.
That was tough.
That was fucking rough,
tough to watch.
Dude.
Yeah. It was.
That was not
tough to
good,
watch.
man.
And again, it comes back to a point I made earlier that Chris Pratt doesn't sell emotional scenes well either.
No.
So it just was not spectacular.
Yeah.
I did want to call out this next scene though, because I liked that it was more subtle, which is Mantis and Drax sitting together talking, and Mantis is listening to Drax talk about his family a bit. And then she puts her hand on Drax, and immediately tears fall from her face.
Yeah.
And you, in that moment, you feel through Mantis what Drax's actual feelings are.
Yeah, totally.
Right? He doesn't break in the moment, but the visual of her instantly tears falling down her face.
Reminiscing about his daughter, and he has great sorrow. And again,
that's a masterful scene.
Yeah, and the thing is,
so good.
To your point, I 100% agree with you. That shit's tight. And then Gamora comes outside, and then Mantis is like, I've been learning a lot of things. I'm a pet and I'm ugly. And then they're like, whoop, cut that shit with a joke real quick, And it's just let the fucking drama breathe, because it's that scene sucked, in my opinion, but only because they don't let it just be good. It's like you can't let something be good for too long. You have to fucking fuck it up because it's a comedy, And but I totally agree. I thought that was a very emotionally impactful thing, and it's a very interesting look into Drax. But it just kind of doesn't really matter because it's jokes, and then we're just kind of past it.
Yep. Yeah. Well, then and this is also right as Mantis is trying to tell Drax something, but they get interrupted by Gamora.
Yeah.
Before that happens, and so we're back to Yondu and Rocket in the cell on the ship, and that they are told they're going to be delivered to the Kree in the morning, and that now we get a little backstory from Yondu as he's talking with Rocket and kind of trying to understand who Rocket is as well, because it seems like they have a lot of similarities between themselves and how they treat other people and what their story is and how he was a slave until Stakar, who was played by Sylvester Stallone, had freed him and brought him in as part of the Ravagers. So we kind of get an intro into how Yondu kind of rose through the ranks there. And yeah, so I think John mentioned this earlier. I liked the relationship that was built between Rocket and Yondu in this movie. I thought they worked really well together, and that it felt believable that Yondu was making a impact into Rocket's life in some way, that he's like breaking past the barrier, because these two characters seem very similar as they start to talk about their history.
Yeah, well, like, also, I mean, I kind of took it as this, like, symbolic thing where essentially, and this kind of happens later, but there's, like, a point in the movie where basically Yondu's like, if you continue to go down the same path that I have gone down, then you're just going to end up where I am. So you need to reevaluate how you treat the people around you, because if you don't reevaluate how you treat the people around you, you're just going to be me, but there's still a chance for you to not be that. And like, I don't know, man, a little heavy-handed, honestly, but like it worked. Like, I didn't hate it, you know, like it made sense, and it like drew an interesting comparison between the characters, so I can give it that.
Yeah, the selling point of this movie to me are these like sort of, because every single one of the characters gets paired off with other characters in order to promote like character growth and bring them each into their own character arcs, which I thought was like really cool in terms of storytelling, with such a big cast. So like for it to be as heavy-handed as it is with Yondu and Rocket is like acceptable. It's excusable for me, because I realize like how many different character pairings there are in this movie, and it's impossible to really give them all like their due time on the screenplay. So I don't know. It's really cool to see all the moving puzzles, for me at least. Like, I agree. It's a little heavy-handed though.
Well, in James Gunn fashion here of just constantly going over the top, Groot is now sent on a mission to find the prototype Finn that's sitting in the captain's quarters inside of a drawer. And
he continually just is bringing the wrong things back.
Not once, not twice, not three times, not four times, but 5 times Groot brings back the wrong thing.
5th time's the charm.
And by the way, I said I would keep it close to the chest. I'm throwing it out there. Like, laugh out loud moment for me, the severed toe. That actually got me. I legitimately was like chuckling audibly to myself. I thought that was funny, because it's like he's just bringing all these inanimate objects, and then like he just kind of randomly brings a severed human toe. Yeah. And that was very funny. I liked that.
I feel like they should have done the rat, the eye, and then the toe.
Yeah.
Or done the desk, the eye, and the toe. Yeah. The reason I'm saying the eye, which, by the way, not to spoil a future movie point here, but is this the eye that's given to a certain character in a future movie that needs an eye? John, do you know who I'm talking about here?
I have no clue if that's the eye.
I think it is. Because Rocket is the one who gives this person the eye and says that he acquired it previously.
Yeah, that's probably.
I had no idea. Anyways, that's an interesting thing. We'll bring it up when we get to it, which I think is in 2 movies.
Woo!
So just amazing callback in that moment. I really like that. Or no, it's further along than 2 movies. So, this is, I think they did it too many times, but in the end, Kraglin has to help Groot get the fin because Groot is an idiot baby. And so he's never successful in getting the fin. And this is the next non-dialogue action mass murdering sequence,
which like the coolest scene in the entire motherfucking movie, dude. Like straight up, like the way that they handled this entire thing and how it's like the variety within like the chaos like was just so cool. Like there's this one part that's like super memorable to me where like the arrow like goes into a hallway and like knocks out one of the lights.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and then it goes like, whoosh, 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 like through everybody. Like that shit's fucking cool. And I liked how in this one, they like really sort of explored the possibilities of that arrow and made it tight. Because that was kind of one of my complaints in Guardians of the Galaxy 1 is that I'm like, conceptually, I think that arrow could be kind of cool, but you just never really get the opportunity to see it be cool. It's like just sort of cheesy. And then they like in Guardians 2, they completely reverse that. Like every time the arrow comes out, it's fucking cool. Like and even like, you know, just the sort of build up, like when they're on the catwalk and they're just sort of walking and there's just like bodies dropping all around them because the arrow is like somewhere above them, like just knocking people off the catwalk.
Just starts blasting on the speakers.
Let the bodies hit the fire. Yeah, dude. No, that shit was fucking like actually cool. Like actually sick. Really well done. And then they don't even like give all the credit to Yondu. Because Rocket gets his cool, like, they're in the control room, and he's seeing people on the security feeds and just shooting through the walls, like, watching people in the security feed, like, get hit.
Five Nights at Freddy's, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's a classic Five Nights at Freddy's scenario. But that was, like, that was, like, honestly tight. That was so fucking sick. Like, that's, like, maybe, going on a way, that might be my favorite scene in any MCU movie we've seen. Like that whole thing start to finish, like that was just good. Like it was just fucking cool.
Damn, we got two MCU favorite scenes back to back in like the same 20-minute span from one movie.
And, interrupted by the worst scene in cinema history, by the way, which again is a very confusing movie.
Well, I don't know. Is there a worse scene than Peter and Ego throwing an energy orb that Peter created?
Dude, like no, like
I
really
don't think so. No.
Like on it, like that is definitively like
okay.
I'm of course being a little hyperbolic, but you know the worst scene in cinema. But if I'm being like very serious, like in Marvel, like all of the Marvel movies, I truly believe that is the worst scene in any of the movies that we've watched or covered on this podcast. That was fucking bad, dude.
Yeah.
I can't think of another one.
Yeah, I know, right? I could probably cite something in Dark World, but you know, we don't need to go back to that again.
But the thing is that like Dark World was boring. Like it wasn't aggressively dumb. Like that was
the part that I was thinking was the polls. Like where he's like, we can
that was aggressively
reverse
dumb. I take that back.
It was like it was really, really bad. Like these polls just magically could be anyways. Doesn't matter.
But like it wasn't supposed to like elicit an emotional reaction from me.
Sure.
I think that was the thing about the catch scene is it's like such a trope, like playing catch with your dad. You know, it's like, and he's been reunited with his dad. Now it's just a dad and a son playing a good old game of catch, and it's just fuck. Yeah, like absolutely not.
I'm actually just surprised that you remember any details from Dark World because
that's true. I had completely forgotten that even happened.
I'll never forget the polls. I don't know, something about them.
Seem to remember like someone gets teleported to like a planet and then just happens to land like at the exact spot that they needed to land to like pick something up or that was not a great movie.
Okay, and then so after they've completed this mass murdering of all the Ravagers, then Rocket decides that they are going to go to Ego's planet. and that they're going to have to do 700 jumps to get to the edge of the universe to make it there, which human or mammalian species don't do so well with it. And they kind of just do the quick like face morphing thing and then leave it.
Yeah.
I liked
And
that.
it's funny because they extend so many other things like comedically too long, but I feel like this was too short.
No,
I feel like
think it was
they
the perfect amount of like face morphing, and I think that they ruined it by continuing it so long when they come back to them.
And actually, in true podcast fashion, I got to agree with John, but in
Yeah,
a more
of course
negative
you do.
way,
Of
where
course
it's
you
like,
do.
I didn't like it at first anyway, but I thought it was like serviceable until they like revisit it. Now their faces are even crazier, and that was sort of the point where it kind of lost me. Also, can we get some air horns really quick?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, hey, what's up, everybody? It's time for your favorite segment on this podcast, Allison's thoughts, because she actually stayed awake for this
she's
entire
back.
motherfucking movie.
No
I
narcolepsy
was,
this time.
I know I was smart. I started it at like 5 o'clock. I was like, "You're not gonna get narcoleptic on me tonight, motherfucker." Okay, Allison's thoughts. At this point, we paused the movie, stood up, refilled our sparkling waters, took a little bathroom break. I went and took a whiz. Okay, so Allison's thoughts, twofold, very quick, simple, actually. Allison's thoughts. Baby Groot feels like he was made specifically to sell merchandise. That was Allison's first thought. Allison's second thought, hot take. This whole movie seems like it's made for guys in their 20s with daddy issues because it can't decide if it's dick/sex jokes with sex robots or if it's like heartfelt dad shit. What are we doing here?
Okay,
there you go. Allison's thoughts. Anyway,
thank you
back
so
to the
much,
podcast.
Allison.
Yep.
Hey, there we go. Thank you so much. And we're back now on the Ego Planet, which, by the way, I do like that they separated out the storylines and like each group kind of had their own thing, but I feel like they cut back and forth a lot in this movie that it was extremely noticeable. Like there was 2-minute scene and then they'd go back to the Ravagers and then they'd go back to the Ego Planet and then they go back to the Ravagers and then they go to Rocket and then I don't know. Am I the only one who thought that there? But I feel like there was a lot of cutbacks and forth.
See, I'm in a spot where my bias is a little skewed because I just come off of watching Avatar 2, and Avatar 2 does that so terribly that anything after will just be fine. So
Gotcha.
I don't know.
I haven't read anything or seen anything or watched anything for Avatar 2 yet because I want to go see it in theaters.
Yeah.
But the one thing I have seen like headlines and article wise is like the transitions and the cuts between scenes are just
it's so bad.
like they spend 30 seconds every time they go into a new environment, just overhead shots, I guess, of like the environment before they actually get into any dialogue every time they transition to a new area.
Those CG effects, but
yeah,
I mean, honestly, it's worth watching anyway.
Okay, well, so when we're back on the planet here, Gamora is trying to call out like, hey, there's something that's off here, and
something's going
Peter's
on
response
this planet.
here. I again, this is probably just a Chris Pratt thing, but like, I don't believe him. He's just not a good actor in this moment.
I'm going to break the fourth wall and read something directly from my notes here, where I wrote, "Man, what a wild pivot in this scene," because it is like it's like very. Everything's fine, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Fuck you," and it's just like, "Whoa, hey, hold on, like the fuck is happening?"
You're just
here?
mad that I found my family.
Yeah.
Like, what is that line? What?
Nothing. And also, there wasn't really sexual. There was like kind of sexual tension between them in the first movie. But not in the way that it is here. And I guess you can maybe explain that by the passage of time, like deepening their connection or whatever. But it seemed weird that dynamic between the two of them then became like the guiding force for the tension in this scene, because it's just like, okay, but it hasn't even like really been like that established, I guess, like, you know. And then he's like mad because he's like into her, but she's like doubting him, but that's not even really like why he's mad exactly. It's like, because basically all that happens is she's just like, hey man, I think something like might be kind of weird with this fucking planet we're on. And he's just like, well then I fucking hate you, you know? And it's just like, it's a strange kind of Anakin Skywalker moment, you know, where you're just like, whoa dude, like, hey, chill out. You were just like trying to fuck her like 30 seconds ago.
Yeah, it was definitely weird.
Yeah.
But that leads to Gamora leaving, and then as she's like walking around the planet, she hears a ship incoming. And it is Nebula losing her mind, like diving straight into the planet and trying to shoot down Gamora pretty terribly. But I also would imagine it's very hard to track a human with a giant ship, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know.
There's no way Nebula will be able to do it either. I mean, that's just canon to Nebula's character. It's like she, you know, at this point within the story, she can't best Gamora, which is like part of why she's so angry all the time.
Yep. And so in this whole thing, then she crashes that ship, and Gamora here picks up one of the turrets from the ship and uses it as like a boom box over her shoulder, and also just shoots the ship a ton, but misses every shot. So again, it's all kind of unclear here of like, was Gamora trying to kill Nebula or was she not? Is this a stormtrooper situation?
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know. I think her heart maybe wasn't in it, but again, it's like, it's so fucking nebulous, like. And then the next scene is just like so dumb, like, you know, they're like fighting, and then it's like Gamora kind of wins, but then Nebula actually wins. She finally gets that win that she's been looking for. And then, like, they get into an argument about who actually won. And then, out of nowhere, Nebula is just like, you were the one who wanted to win, and I just wanted a sister. And now they're, like, buddies again. Like, I don't know. It's kind of going back to, I think.
They weren't really buddies after that, but I did think perspective.
Sure, like they're not, but it's like, but then at that point they're like, oh, okay, I guess we got to work together and not kill each other anymore, and all the history that's been laid out from the first movie and everything that happened before the first movie and everything up till this point in this movie, we're just going to sort of ignore that and explore the Death Cave, you know, like. And I think kind of to like a point that John was sort of saying earlier. Maybe not exactly agreeing with me in this moment, I don't know, but like Nebula just has this weird thing in this movie where it's like through the second act and the third act, like anytime she talks, it's just like here's a lot of character development happening very, 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 very quickly, and now we're going to move past it, and I'm this now. You know, it's like she's just changing her motivations constantly.
It's just like the MCU effect, where when they finally figured out how to like loop these characters into the final like to the end game parts of the narrative, like they had to hurry a lot of pacing up to catch those characters up to like be on par with everything else. It's like I just wish these movies didn't have to be in the MCU, because then maybe we would have gotten like really good movies. But I don't know. It's
no, I feel it, because they're trying to link it to the rest of the story of the overarching kind of MCU, because all these things play up later as well.
I believe that. And I also think too that like if I had the context of the later movies, this shit might not bother me as much. But considering that it's like at this point I'm just viewing it in a microcosm, it's just like these fucking character motivations are all over the goddamn place, and especially in this movie too. I was saying it before with Yondu. Yondu kind of gets that treatment, in my opinion, where it's like his shit gets hurried up really quickly at the end. Peter's like about face that he just did is like really fucking fast. Like the Gamora Nebula reconcile that happens here is really fast. And even like the Rocket Raccoon shit that's also really fast. Like there's just like a lot of like the end of the movie, all the characters are just like kind of just getting shoved along like very, very quickly to try to get where they're going to be.
Yep. And so now Ego and Peter are talking, and this is kind of where he's going to shed light more on like what he actually thinks, right? And I think if Peter is paying any form of attention throughout this talk, where they're talking about the fact that they can't be with mortals, and that they're the only ones who can help the universe and all this other stuff. If Peter wasn't so like obsessed in this moment now, apparently with having a father, he would have kind of realized that, hey, some of the things he's saying here are like leading me to believe that maybe Ego is not the person he says he is.
What?
I know, kind of wild. And we get a little cut real quick to Mantis waking Drax up from his sleep and saying that
well, first, okay, hold on.
danger.
Before we get a cut to Mantis waiting Drax up, we get a cut to Mantis like doing this weird like hiding behind a wall with her head halfway poking out, watching the conversation unfold between Peter and Ego. Which that's silly. It's just silly. That I don't even have more to elaborate on beyond
I
saying
didn't even
that, like,
pay
that
any
was
attention
silly.
to that.
Yeah.
Like it didn't affect me in any way.
Yeah.
So I didn't even. Yeah.
Well, it happens. Just trust me.
Yeah, I believe you. In this movie, I believe you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they cut back, and now Ego's going to reveal his plan. He says he wanted to find life, but when he found it, it was all so disappointing. And that's when he came to the realization that he didn't want to walk among life, that he wanted to... And then it cuts out again. And again, it's like, this is where I'm talking about, like, there's a lot of cuts to different stories here in this moment where they're like cutting off dialogue of reveals of things to like go to another thing. Because now then it cuts straight to then Gamora and Nebula, and they find the dead bodies inside of the Ego planet.
Right.
And this is where like shit starts to turn up, because I forgot about the bodies, and then we start to realize what's actually happened here. But we don't get to that yet until we get a Stan Lee appearance with the Watchers.
The Watchers. Yep.
Which this is addressing something that some people had called out previously to this movie, which maybe there's a reason that Stan Lee is in all of these movies, that maybe he's actually a Watcher, and that he is the same person in every one of these, but he's putting himself in these situations to watch over the Avengers and the events of things that are happening across the universe. And this kind of plays that up, but he's more like a confidential informant to the Watchers than he is one of the Watchers.
Yeah.
And so this was kind of a neat payoff, but we kind of don't see this addressed again with future movies or shows or anything else. And in the spin-off What If, which consists of having the Watcher, Stan Lee does not make any appearances.
Is it Watu?
But I thought this was
Is Watu the What If Watcher?
I think so, yeah.
Word?
Yep.
Good. Shout out to my boy
really,
Watu.
Yeah, it's really great, actually. The What If cartoon series, I liked it a lot. I don't know where John sat on that, but that doesn't.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Let's get through Guardians Volume 2 first, and then see. So we get that, and then Yondu, this is another Yondu Rocket part here, where they're talking about how, Yondu is essentially reading Rocket, saying like that he's this scared one, that no one gave a rat's ass about him when he was growing up, that he was... Because Rocket was born in a lab, developed specifically to be this like pilot / killing machine, I guess. And so that's just another quick kind of throwaway cutaway moment before we cut back to Ego's plan. Finally, we hear from Ego directly about the expansion.
Right, and also we get some classic mind control too, which is just a fun layer in this movie.
Wait, what was the mind control here?
He like taps Peter's head, and then Peter's eyes like turn into galaxies, and he's like, "I see your plan now, and am completely on board." And the only thing
that's not really mind control.
It's so okay, whatever. Again,
it's like he put a VR headset on him.
It's mind control adjacent because he's like being robbed of his own free will to just sort of blindly accept this dude's plan. Until the moment that he figures out that actually Ego gave his mom brain cancer, I guess. And it's
we also find out that the bodies are all
it's all like failed. He fucked a bunch of aliens and couldn't produce Eternals or fucking what are they called?
Celestial.
Couldn't produce another Celestial until he fucked a human, and then did produce a Celestial. And so all the skulls inside of the Gamorra Nebula cave are all the failed things, and Yondu's a part of that too. I don't know if we know that yet or not, but he is. I forget if that got addressed already.
He talks. Yeah, in this moment, Ego mentions that he paid Yondu specifically to deliver these children back to him.
But he also says that Yondu didn't know that that's what he was doing with them. He told them that he wasn't harming them, which is why Yondu was like, all right, cool, whatever.
Yeah, but it turns out he wasn't harming them because they never felt a thing.
Yeah.
They were dead. But the whole tumor in the head thing is that Ego, at least to what he tells Peter, is saying that his mother was the one true love of his life, and that if he had kept spending time there, that would have interrupted his expansion plan, and so he purposely put the tumor in her head to ensure that she would not distract him from his purpose in life.
Right, which is like just not good. Again, just writing in this movie that I didn't like, because it's sort of like, all right, but I mean, is he like really gonna like tell Peter
he doesn't have
that?
to say anything
Like it's
about
like
that.
it's like it's this thing where I guess you could sort of stretch it and kind of be like, okay, well that's like maybe the moment he's coming clean about everything. But on the flip side too, it's like, I mean, this dude's like an uber intelligent like god figure, like, you know, at no point is he like, oh shit, maybe I just keep this close to the chest and then like talk about it later. And even for an uber intelligent god figure, it's like brain cancer, dude. Really? Like that was your plan. That was like the best fucking thing you could think of.
Yeah.
You know? It's like okay.
Yeah, like
I
just
guess.
said
like,
that you could kill people without them feeling anything. So why didn't you just do that with his mom?
Right? Instead of giving the woman you love crippling brain cancer.
Yeah, you can't defend it. There's just nothing
like
here.
dude.
Yeah, it's I don't get it. I don't know how we got to that point.
Oh god.
And Ego says that he created the form specifically to appeal to Peter, which by the way addresses your earlier point about his older form.
Yeah, I suppose that's right, because he like wants to be old here because then
he wants to
more,
like make the timeline right for Peter when he meets him.
Yeah.
Right. And so as he gets reformed after Peter shoots him a whole bunch of times, David Hasselhoff makes an appearance in this movie as Ego for a moment. Interesting cameo.
Yeah, which also, dude, and again, like this movie just being like cut with just like sheer just fucking stupidity and like just horrible writing, then going to a scene of like when he gets like shot a bunch by Peter. Like, that was fucking sick, dude. Like, you know, and it's like chunks of him are like missing. And he's like, "Ugh," and he's like reshaping himself in real time while still talking. And then he becomes David Hasselhoff. Like, that was fucking cool, dude. Like, again, like, and so sometimes this movie does that, but then other times, but it's like, But it's like, so that happens on the back of the brain tumor thing. And so now I'm still like trying to process like how the fuck any of that makes sense. And it almost like makes the shit I like not as impactful, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And at the same moment, he then destroys Peter's Walkman.
Oh my God. Yeah, the one thing you can't do to Peter Quill.
And at the same moment, he triggers the plant not only on Earth, but also everywhere to start growing up out of the ground, which I've forgot that this moment exists. And I don't think it's ever referenced again that this giant, like, what is this goo or whatever, this gel like appears out of the earth and then starts overtaking buildings. Like, it's not like it went 20 feet and took over the Dairy Queen. This was like a mile, maybe more, of like this spread.
Like, the entire time I'm watching this, I'm just kind of like, where the fuck are the Avengers? Like, isn't this like their like, isn't this their thing that they're there? And then it's like this weird thing where it's like, okay, Earth is like being taken over by this like creepy glowing sludge, and I guess everyone just has to fucking deal with it. Like,
it's one of those things where it's like, it would have been cooler if like the growing thing from the plant was like a reformation, like almost like it was a different dimension on Earth, right?
Yeah.
Because what they did was they literally destroyed and killed people and destroyed buildings with this thing, but it just wasn't ever referenced after this movie.
Yeah.
Or even at the end of this movie, it was like,
or
it stopped.
or at least like throw in a little cameo from like one of the Avengers.
Just put Falcon flying around scouting the
Falcon
area
in there, yeah.
Right, and then it's like he's scouting the area, and then it begins to like recede because at the end of the movie they like figure it out, and then he radios back to base, being like, I don't know what the hell that was.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we're good, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, once again, it's the MCU problem. Like, we would never have to think about that if it wasn't part of the MCU.
Right, for sure.
Yeah,
no, exactly.
true.
But yeah, they've expanded out their universe to a point where it's like, that's suspicious that they're not there. But what you gonna do?
Well, the other thing too is after 4 phases of MCU, then you have to question every time a new hero appears. It's like, where have you been for the past now I think 12 years in the MCU? At least canon timeline wise, it's like, where have you been this whole time when Thanos came and New York opened and all this other, anyway. So that is an MCU thing that has to be dealt with for sure.
We got
cool.
But we actually too, around this point, again, to the credit of this movie, some things I like, we actually sort of see the first visual of Ego, like the planet from space. And it has the face in it, like, because it's him, and that was fucking cool. And so again, I never know what to feel while I'm watching this, because it's like I hate it, and then I like it, and then I hate it, and then I like it, and that was a thing I liked. Like, I thought that was sick. That was visually really cool.
And after Peter and Yondu have a little talking moment on the ship, and Peter's like, "What, Yondu? Why are you here?" And they're talking, and he's like, "You still think that I didn't give you over to Ego just because I wanted to use you for thieving?" Like, you know, they kind of have this quick moment in there that's starting to set up like, hey, maybe Yondu wasn't necessarily the bad guy the whole time.
Right.
But this leads to them drilling into the core of the planet to try to find the core of Ego to take him out. And this was another really insanely cool looking part of the
actually
movie.
The entire time I was watching this scene, I was thinking that would totally work as like a Disneyland ride, like one of the ones where you're sitting in the thing and there's the screen in front of you and it's like like the whole like room's moving around. That lends itself to that very nicely. I thought that was cool. And even like how like the ship has like the little orbs on it that move around to like make the lasers go in different directions. Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, I agree.
All the non-dialogue part.
Yeah, also a non-dialogue part. Yeah.
The one thing that confused me, this is like extremely nitpicky. The one thing that confused me was like, how are they steering around like a ship that can move in like every direction with a steering wheel? It doesn't make sense to me. But, you know, I guess we could just chalk that up to Disney being Disney.
Yeah, they go left and right, and then there's levers for the different axes.
Yeah, except you see the actors like the entire time, 2 hands on the wheel.
Yeah, I mean, you're right.
What you're not understanding is they have the best pilot in the world,
right? Canonically
at the helm.
now, because they made it through the asteroid field. Yeah, and then again, even this cool moment gets interrupted with some shitty dialogue because they make it to the center, and then it's just like, that's Ego's core. And I just thought it was really funny because it's like, yeah, duh.
Of course it is.
Shit, dude. And it's like they're like looking at this like beating heart geode. And it's like, just in case you weren't paying attention, that's Ego's core. It's like,
yeah. And if all of this wasn't enough, the Sovereign also show up in this moment as well.
Which was cool. By the way, hey, I liked that. I thought that was fun. You know, it did a little extra complication.
Yeah, they tracked him down, and now we get to the main, the main end battle here of the movie. And Gamora, Drax, and Mantis fall out of the ship while the Sovereign have started fighting, and that all this fighting is going down, and they all land in like superhero poses onto this platform, which. I don't know. They fell out of the ship, but they all landed perfectly. I will never complain about a superhero pose unless it's something that just really feels off in this moment. It feels like they all should have, I don't know, fallen,
died or something.
And I mean, not even died. Like, if it wasn't that far, that's fine, but maybe not in like perfect. And it even felt like, and this is me calling out a green screen moment, but it's like they fell in a way that looked like they were being dropped with wires. Like the movement didn't feel organic as they landed to me. Yeah. And I think that's what threw me out of that.
Also, the sound that they make, I think, plays a big part in it because it didn't sound like they made much of an impact onto the ground. And so that also makes it feel weird.
Yeah, like they had the boots from Portal that prevent you from taking fall damage. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so this all comes around to now the batteries again, because they need a way to destroy the core. I like this turnaround. I thought they didn't really mention the batteries anymore after this, but the batteries had always been there. That's how the Sovereign had been, or that's why the Sovereign had been tracking them. Yeah. And now they're going to use the batteries to take out the core, which is a cool little follow-up from earlier in the movie. Yeah. Because they mentioned, the Sovereign had mentioned they didn't want to initially blow up the ship because the batteries would take out their entire fleet with how powerful they are when they explode.
Yep. And the only way to make it into the core is, of course, to send someone tiny enough to get there, and that's your boy Baby Groot. Which, by the way, one of the attempts at humor in the movie that actually kind of landed with me. The scene where Rocket and Groot are on the thing, and he's like, don't press this button, and Groot keeps almost pressing the big detonator button. I thought that was funny. I just also, like, I don't know, I wish there had been like a bigger payoff for that, because then he just puts the thing on and presses the right button. Like, I don't know. But of course, like, what are you going to do? Blow the thing up and kill everybody?
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. Like, but he could have like, something could have happened where like he was about to press the wrong button and then something like made it so he accidentally pressed the right one.
Yeah, like the planet shakes and then he's like, like for sure. Yeah, like something there that's like, okay, air horns.
Oh,
that's your job. Hey,
that's
welcome back to Christians. That's an insane nitpick. That is a tiny nitpick, but
that's my
I felt like
nitpick.
Yeah, I feel like that steering wheel nitpick even makes more sense. I'm just like from the writing, I think they could have just done that better. I would have punched that up if I had been in the writer's room.
And the quick two little moments here are Mantis does find the power to put Ego to sleep. Drax says that he believes in her. She does it and says, he says, I didn't actually believe in you. I didn't think you could do it. Again, I get where your punchline Drax moments come in here.
Yeah. Like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's how you laugh.
That's a good Drax impression.
Thank you.
I'm curious if you like this next scene, because I don't know if maybe it's too much. I like this. The Peter looking for tape for Rocket. He's like, I need a piece of tape to place over this button. And then you hear Peter going around and like getting hit and saying ow and like checking in with everyone to see if they have tape, which I thought it was a fun moment.
Like I was in a Disneyland like queue waiting for the ride.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, totally.
I'm a sucker for that
Yeah.
stuff.
No, I'll say it's like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's not for me, right? That's for
Sure.
Dan. That's like a Dan
Yeah.
scene. That being said, it works in the context of the movie. It didn't feel out of place to me. Like I get it. It's kind of funny, whatever. I felt like had there been more things like that and less just like utterances of the word penis, I might have overall found this movie a little funnier. But whatever.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't bad.
Well, the Sovereign has surrounded their ship, the one that Rocket and Nebula and them are in, Yondu and all of that, and they need an extra bit of power, and Nebula's going to provide that power so that they can shoot up all the lasers at once, spread out all across, which again, those like balls that go across the outside of the ship to line up where the lasers go. I thought that was a cool payoff in the way that they ended up utilizing those layers to take out the Sovereign crew, which didn't hit anyone that was important. All the Guardians and stuff on the ground. Thankfully for that.
Thrown a little monkey wrench in the whole
almost
plan.
did, though.
Yeah. Whew.
Yep.
Oh, close one.
And this is definitely the most quoted line from this movie outside of it in merch, in Twitter, in all these places, from Yondu as he's coming down, holding onto the arrow, which is essentially bringing him down like an umbrella. It's like, shooting away to prevent his fall and all that kind of whatever. But this is where Peter says that he looks like Mary Poppins. And then Yondu yells, "I'm Mary Poppins, y'all." And this was the line that was taken away probably the most out of this movie compared to every other thing.
Yikes.
I mean,
I know, and I knew you'd love that.
Else said in this movie, it's probably
I guess maybe that's like the one thing you could put on a shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you Google search "I'm Mary Poppins," y'all, just tons and tons of shirts and mugs and silhouettes and stickers and like just crazy. Mantis gets knocked out, Ego awakens, Groot makes it to the core, everything's starting to fall into place. Drax now realizes that he's got to take Mantis away and has to put on the jetpack thing,
right?
Which links
he
back
says,
to I don't know the exact quote, but he says something about his nipples.
My nipples.
Yeah,
right.
I can't believe I didn't remember that.
I know.
Catch that one.
Yeah, and I stood up and I cheered. I was clapping.
Yeah, I know
was
you did.
I was writhing around on the floor.
And I guess how this storyline had to play out with Yondu and everything with saving Quill at the end. But Rocket says, I've only got one of each, and it's the jetpack and the spacesuit thing. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I feel like earlier in the movie we saw they had like a whole bucket of these things, but the way that I'm kind of looking at it is like they only had a minute and a half left. He had to get to the ship. They couldn't go back down and give him another jetpack. But Rocket knew leaving in that moment, even if both Yondu and Quill survived, out of the core of the planet, one of them was going to die.
Right.
I mean, that was the end result that was going to happen in that moment. Mm-hmm. And so I liked it, but I also was trying not to think too logically in that moment of like, why he would have even one extra, and then if he had one, why didn't he have more than one?
Yeah.
He's got small pockets. He's a small thing.
Yeah, he's a small thing.
Sure. I guess he is pretty small. Now, Ego's taking back his human form, but he's going kind of at a slower pace, and I really liked the way that he was formulating the bones and then like the muscles on top of the bones, but it wasn't like 2 seconds. It was probably 45 seconds to a minute, maybe longer of him forming back into it.
Looks like like a high school class anatomy skeleton.
Yeah. Yeah, even I felt like, because you've seen other kind of skeletons and things where the jaw and everything just moves perfectly to the talking, but I also like that this was more realistic in the way that even as he was talking, as his lips started to form, his words were clearer as well. I thought all of this was
it was cool. I agree. Like,
cool
again,
moment.
like visually, a high point of the movie for me was like him coming back together. Again, like they just visually, like you can't really shit on this movie. Like everything it tried to do, it did well. It was just everything else.
Yeah. And Peter somehow takes hold of his powers. Oh, this is it. Because Yondu, as he's getting covered and all the Guardians are getting covered by the rocks.
You have the like the sort of dumb, like, oh, they all are getting
everyone's
defeated.
Gonna die.
Everyone is going to die. Yeah.
And then Yondu has the line, something to the effect of, I don't control the arrow with
my penis.
Mouth or whistle.
Yeah.
I control it with my
Right.
And then he's under the ground. And that's when Peter knows he should use his heart instead of his mind.
I think that one is the worst line.
That was pretty fucking bad, dude.
Yeah, Yondu doesn't sell that super well in that moment. And so anyways, this is what kicks off Peter starting to get a hold of those powers and save all the Guardians at the same time, go up against Ego. Groot successfully starts the bomb timer, and they Groot just makes it out of that cave instantly.
Yep.
There's
he's
good. So Groot's good, and then they as Rocket hands over the stuff to Yondu before Yondu says like, hey, you got to give this to me. Like I've got to save Peter out of here. And they hand all that stuff over. Groot welcomes Yondu into the Guardians of the Galaxy, but he didn't say frickin'.
But he didn't say frickin'. Yeah, dumb, bad, dumb, didn't like it.
I did like the general idea though of Yondu being like welcomed into the Guardians of the Galaxy at this moment, but like it was undersold by that.
But yeah, and also
line.
it's like Rocket would just say fuck, like he just so it's like so him not saying that is some like weird like out of character. This is a PG-13 movie kind of deal. It's just like whatever.
Yeah, why did he censor Groot?
Right, he wouldn't. Like his character would not have done that. Like, but it just is what it is.
Yeah.
Gamora's gonna try to go save Peter. Rocket stuns her before she's able to do so. The core blows up and Ego is destroyed, which by the way we kind of gloss over, but destroying the planet means that Peter is no longer immortal.
Right, because he says, if you kill me,
dumb human,
you'll be just like everybody else. To which Peter responds, what's so wrong with that? Just a fantastic Chris Pratt acting moment.
It's that, and also it's like, it's almost like they were trying to use more words to take up more time. It's like what he said wasn't also just delivered poorly. The line also was like so much.
Yeah.
He's like, and what is wrong about that?
Right.
It's like,
he's like a proper guy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they were trying to add more seconds to the movie, like it wasn't long enough or something, and they had to find ways, so they just expanded out these little moments with more
I feel
words.
like when they're really trying to pad the movie is so Quill and Yondu make it off the planet, but that's only because Yondu puts a jetpack onto Quill, and then he puts the jetpack on himself and then the shield onto Quill, and then he takes them off the planet. And in this moment, he knows that he's going to die because there's only the one shield. To which Quill goes, Yondu, no! Oh God, no! Ah, no! Yondu, no! No! Ah! Yondu, no!
I will say
the fantastic Chris Pratt acting moment. Yeah.
Chris Pratt ruins that moment a bit because
I
feel like Yondu actually delivered the lines
Dude, he
really
did.
well.
Yondu, hey,
Like
you know what, man? No beef towards the Yondu actor. He did everything he needed to do. And then Chris Pratt just fumbles that death scene, dude.
100%. Because he says,
fuck, man.
he may have been your father, but he wasn't your daddy. I'm sorry I didn't do it right.
Yeah.
I'm lucky you're my boy. Like, he sells it
Dude, totally.
to him.
I know.
And
then,
Chris just, like, throws his head against
Chris,
the wall in response.
The thing is, like, I'm halfway joking, but it's basically what I just did.
Yeah.
Like, that's essentially what happens in that scene.
It is. It is. And then that's it. Yondu's dead. They cut to Yondu's funeral on the ship and talked about how he was basically David Hasselhoff and that Peter had a pretty cool dad.
Yeah.
That was his funeral. It was that he made a kind of good speech there. I thought that was maybe the only redeeming thing for Chris, like him talking about Yondu in that moment.
Well, but
almost
even still,
sold it.
but I will say, even him talking about Yondu, it's still a joke. So it kind of makes sense that like Chris can like live in that, because he's like comparing him to fucking Hasselhoff or whatever. He's like, on our planet, there's a guy. Like it's a goofy eulogy. Like it's still a jokey thing. So it sort of makes sense. But then again, also, we have like the Ravager funeral. And again, it's just like a weird writing moment for me where, you know, they're like, he didn't let us down after all. And I was kind of saying it in the first, but I'm like, how, like
he still did break the code.
But he still did break the code, right? And it's like, okay, so like, I guess they're just like into Peter Quill. Cause like the whole thing was like, that he just like risked it all to like save Peter, but like the Ravengers don't even really like, you know, I mean, I don't know, maybe some of them are like into Peter, but it seems like Yondu was really the one that liked Peter the entire time. And then also it's like, okay, so even if Rocket Raccoon got a hold of them, how do they know that that's like reliable information? They're just trusting him at his word then. And also, like, he still delivered children to Ego that were all ceremoniously executed. Like, him dying in a selfless way to save a guy they don't even really give a fuck about. Like, that's not like a redeeming moment from the Ravengers' perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I view it is that they know that Ego is the one who was killing these children, even if it was Yondu, who they find out was delivering children, right? Mm-hmm. But they also, the Ravagers, while they clearly hated Yondu for what he did, they clearly hated Ego for doing it, right? And no one was going to take out Ego. No one. Yeah. There was no one alive that could take out Ego besides Quill.
Yeah.
Right? And so the fact that Yondu and Quill together took out Ego, I think plays a hand in why they're saying that he came through for them in the end.
So my take was more of that Ego was a threat to the universe and Yondu played a part in getting rid of him. And that's as cut and dry as it gets. But
I mean,
it also
sort of.
What do you mean sort of?
Like Yondu sort of plays a role in that, but I mean,
so that's what I'm saying.
But what does Yondu do really, other than informing Peter that he needs to use his heart?
Right.
You know,
other than that, he does crash into Ego with the ship while he's starting to take over all the planets.
It was his idea to go back for Peter too. Rocket didn't want to do that, but at the same time, I feel like Rocket would have like embellished how big a role he played in it, because Rocket really liked Yondu. So, but that's just like headcanon now, you know?
Yeah. So we get the big Ravager funeral for Yondu here with the fireworks. And all the visuals of this were really great, I thought. Like all the ships. And also we saw a lot of the Ravager crews in this moment too. Yeah. And isn't one of the actresses in this moment? Yeah. And she actually is in the end credit scene as well, because they wanted, after this movie came out, there was a lot of talk about the other Ravagers, including Sylvester Stallone, but also including Michelle and all the other actors that kind of were playing in one of the end credit scenes here. But that is the end. We've reached the end of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
I really like that the last scene ends with a close-up of Rocket and not fucking Peter Quill. Because goddamn, Peter just sucks in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And I didn't remember this, but there are
Like
1,
5
2,
after credits.
3, 4, 5
so
end credit
many.
scenes in
Too
this.
many.
Yeah. And the first one here is Kraglin learning how to use the arrow, and then he accidentally
and
hits.
I said I
Drax
was
with
going to
it.
play it close to the chest. Other laugh out loud moment of the movie to me.
Yeah,
I
it's
laughed. I thought this was very
Yeah.
funny. When Drax
that
gets
was a
hit in the
great
throat
moment.
by the arrow, that was just funny. Like, that was actually very funny.
Yep, that was a good one. Next credit scene is the Ravager scene, and that they're going to get together here with Stakar leading them. And again, this is something that people wanted to see afterwards,
Yeah.
but I don't think we've really seen much follow up.
We get
I
the
think they did.
we get the classic Sylvester Stallone utterance of the line. You know, was it a shame that I took the tragedy of the bring it all together? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
You know who you sound like? You sound like that the person in Monsters Inc.
yeah.
The
Roz.
one who's Roz.
Yeah.
There you go. You sound like Roz from Monsters Inc.
Yeah, or
Which I don't-
Sylvester Stallone.
Yes. Yep. Next end credit scene is with the Sovereign. We see a completely destroyed, emotionally destroyed leader of the Sovereign now with her hair. Again, another call to like a new hairstyle representing like kind of the torment that she's gone through. And then they reveal that they're working on a new class of Sovereign that is in this birthing pod, and they're going to call him Adam, which is
Wow.
a nod to Adam
Warlock.
Warlock. Heyo, which is going to play out in Guardians 3, which comes out in May this year. I guess now
Yeah.
we're in 2023.
That's pretty sick.
And then we get another one, which is now, which I looked it up, by the way, just to clarify. This is Teenage Groot, and this is a time lapse that they've now gone forward a few years into the future. This is what Groot will look like the next time the Guardians show up,
Okay.
which is in the future.
Which is going to be annoying.
yeah.
Yes, so this is new teenage Groot,
Yeah.
and they're giving a little hint towards that. And then finally, Stan Lee essentially boring the Watchers to a point where they leave him alone because they don't want to hear any more stories from Stan Lee.
Right.
Which was a little disrespectful to Stan Lee, honestly.
Yeah.
But
I hear it killed him.
All right. Well, and that's the end of that movie.
Woo!
Wow. That was a lot. Well, I think we discussed this movie more in depth than any other MCU movie.
Well, there's actually a lot to discuss here, considering that
Yeah.
it's like it's a weird concoction of shit that works and shit that doesn't work. Like, so it's like it's
Yep.
not like this like one-dimensional thing where it's just like it all sucked or it all didn't. It's like it did suck and then it didn't suck and then it did suck and then it didn't
Yep.
suck, sort of repeating infinitely.
Yeah. Well, normally this is the point where we would all go around and say what we liked, what we didn't like, and then some final thoughts. I think that we have thoroughly expanded on what we liked and didn't
I
like
think
through
so.
this
Yeah,
podcast.
I think that's fair.
So I think what we do is just some ratings here.
Yep.
And call it a podcast.
Yeah, I'm down.
for that.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, 3.5. Don't watch it. It's like, there you go. That's my rating.
Wow. 3.5 is, you know what? That feels right for you.
Yeah, well,
actually.
because the thing is, I don't want to give it a 3 because it's not as boring as Civil War, but it doesn't
Okay.
deserve a 4 because it wasn't good. So it gets a 3.5.
I still can't believe the Civil War rating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ready for this? I think you might be slightly surprised by my
let's
rating.
see-
here.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I'm gonna give this movie a solid 6 out of 10.
Ooh.
Yeah. I don't. That's not
Which
super surprising.
is-
That makes sense. Yeah.
The lowest non-shitty
Right.
MCU, which Dark World was lower for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd put this at a 6. Overall, I liked a lot of it, but even in this moment, as we went through this podcast and talked about it, my rating went down.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think that I had this weird thing too, where it's like I also liked, I don't know if I'd say a lot. That might be a little generous, but I liked segments of it. but none
Yeah.
of what I liked amounted to a good movie. Like, if I take it in its totality, it was not a good movie. It was like a shitty movie that had things about it that I liked, like, at the end of the day, you know?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
you're kind
absolutely.
of throwing a wrench in the format of the podcast here, where we're not going to get too in depth. I'm going to throw a wrench in the rating system, for at least for me.
Oh, shit.
Where I'm going to give
hell.
2 ratings. One's going to be a more objective take, and then one's going to be a more personal rating. My objective rating is a 5.5. I think
Okay.
it's just a little bit better than it is bad, but it is like on both extremes of good and bad. But I really like this movie. I'd give it like a 7.9 out of 10. That's
a rating.
This is one of those movies that I liked so many moments in it, but I also never put on Marvel movies to actually watch them. I just put them on in the background. So like, I don't have to listen to the shitty dialogue, and I know the good moments. So like, whenever those moments pop up on the screen, that's when I pay attention, and then I just tune out for the rest of it. So it's I don't know. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
there it is.
Yep.
That was a podcast about Guardians of the Galaxy,
Volume
Volume
the Civil
2.
War.
Well, actually, it's :
Parentheses.
period 2.
Ooh, that is true. It is : Vol period 2. Which I personally found
Civil
very
War.
confusing. What the fuck is a
Yeah, I
Vol?
know you
What's a
didn't.
Vol?
What even
What's
is
a
a Vol?
Vol?
Is that some sort of crazy space creature?
Well, you know what? That wraps up this Vol of Cape shit.
Ooh, all right. Well, yep. Okay. Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next
Yes.
time.
Okay,
Bye.
see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.